Now, this is a story of how I turned about $75 into $5 million. Okay? Wealth comes with an implied morality, trust, respect, and knowledge that doesn't often exist. I don't actually believe you need money to start a company. And I say that because I've done it. If I found out tomorrow selling hot dogs was the best way to make money.
Derik Dogs.
Write that down. There's already a logo being made. Derik Dogs. Actually, I like that.
That'd be an expensive key to lose, wouldn't it?
You have no idea.
How much is a key like that to replace?
So I only know this because I've lost the key. So it's about $4,000.
For a fucking key?
And
Burr.
so with the Rolls, they'll let you buy one. With the Bentley, you have to buy two. I also know.
Because you bought both.
Yes. Which, ironically, I found the key like 3 days after I ordered it,
Hey.
but they wouldn't return it.
Of course not.
Of course
Why
not.
would you do that?
So now I have 4 keys
Oh,
for one car.
anyways, cheers, mate.
Cheers.
To potentially your first liquid death. Tastes like water?
Shockingly like water.
Yeah, it tastes like water, yeah.
But the packaging screams something else.
Yeah, people have heard me say this multiple times. I've been carded probably 3 times buying a case of these. Because
Really?
the marketing is deliberately like, it's meant to be like, hey, let's trick people into thinking it's beer. And yeah, every time, like, I guess the checkout, we call them checkout chicks here. What do you guys do? You know, like person at the checkout?
Cashier.
Yeah, see, that's a professional. We call them checkout chicks.
What is it?
Checkout chick.
I like that. I'm going to start using that.
It's good, right?
It is
Has
good.
a ring to it.
Yep.
But
It reminds me, my friend calls Chick-fil-A Lick-a-Chick.
wow. Yeah.
It's going to stick with you.
Sounds sticky.
That's it, bud.
But yeah, no, every time they see it in the peripherals, they're just like, they think, they'll just go automatically, oh, do you have ID? And I'm like, oh, it's water. They're like, it is?
Yes.
I'm like, I come into the Publix every time and it's always empty on the shelves. I'm like, so surely you guys have seen this, but it never seems to
It's
check
such a
out with them.
testament to the strength of marketing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's water. Mm-hmm. It's water. Let's just be clear.
Yeah.
But it's a sensation, and I often go to their website, and as I said, this is the first time I've actually had the product, but it's such a unique and creative way to market water.
Yeah, you're marketing an extremely saturated product.
No pun intended.
Yeah, nice. As I said it, I was like, oh, fuck. But yeah, I mean, it just shows you need some sort of novelty to stuff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, have you seen their Instagram?
Yes, I've been on, and I saw they made a movie.
They made a movie?
They made a movie.
What about?
The most ridiculous horror movie that you've ever seen.
Oh, okay.
But as soon as you turn it on, it's so bad, you have to watch the whole thing, which I encourage you to do so.
I'll have to, okay. Because I've seen like they have deliberate outrage. And I don't know if this is genuine complaints or if it's like, you're pretending it's a complaint. But one was like some lady there's an ad they did about, these kids getting fucked up in the living room, smashing water, like treating it like they're partying, and the mom's like happy. And apparently someone was just super outraged about it.
I would assume deliberate. But,
Yeah.
but again, back to their marketing, what really drew me to them was I just happened on it, and it was an ad for, I think, a case of Liquid Death. And the ad was, buy a case of Liquid Death, get the second one for full price. And I thought, that is genius.
Yeah.
So they're saying the things that you wouldn't think a company would say.
Yeah.
But that makes it kind of great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's cool. Even if you get emails from them, like it's like head of murdering or something like that. Like they just lean into it completely. But it's kind of cool to see now, particularly most things become, I think they're still private. But everything is, okay, as soon as everything gets corporate, that's when it's like, it just washes itself down. Wow, there's so many puns. It washes itself down into just boring shit.
Sure.
But it's funny when you see private companies just go, you know what? We're gonna
stick with it.
Stick with it. Lean into a bit of outrage, but it's obviously just fun. It shows you the power of marketing in itself.
Yeah, and just the honesty of your products.
Yeah.
They definitely have a niche, but that's okay because niches aren't inherently small. It's more directive. It can be a massive niche, which, I mean, it's water. right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I like it though because I can just leave it in my car, and I don't like it. Doesn't when like you drink out of, especially in Florida, it's so freaking hot. I just leave them in my car, and like worst case scenario, they'd be a little bit warm.
I don't mind warm water.
Really? I feel like I'm drinking piss.
I actually prefer it. Well, I don't. I've never done that. But I presume it's not very enjoyable. But I have water in my my pantry. I never put it in the fridge. I don't know why. That
is unique.
They say that it's better for you, but that's not the reason I do it. It's just not the reason. You could argue it's laziness, meaning I just take it, put it in there, and it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But I like to say I enjoy it warm.
Yeah. The what is it? Just quickly get this real close to you. Yeah. Super close. I want to hear you more.
Okay.
You have such a nice voice.
Oh, thank you, sir.
See, now you sound like a radio host. Or was it the thing with what is it? The room temperature stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily better for you. It just requires less processing. So if someone's dehydrated, you give them warm water. Oh, sorry, room temperature. But I got like this. It's not based in any science. It's just Blake science, which is great. If you have cold water, it requires energy to heat it up, so it's better for your metabolism.
I think you're right.
Yeah. We'll settle that.
Try to embarrass me?
No, I'm just saying. This is Blake science.
You're right.
Anyway, so Derik, great to meet you. I just slid into your DMs. I think you saw Brad's episode, and I was just like, "This guy's interesting."
I did, yes.
Yeah. So for people listening who've just listened to our entire talk about water.
I thought we were going to go the whole 2 hours about that, which we probably could.
We probably could. Yeah, let them know what you do, who you are, and we'll see where this goes. Who knows where it'll go.
Love it. It's funny. It seems to be the most simplistic question that people answer, and is literally the one question that when I know it's coming, I have the most apprehension. Because it's such a hard answer. So the one-word answer is I'm an entrepreneur. The more big picture is I would call myself a dreamer, right? Because it literally is a dream from where I started to where I am today, and every day kind of feels that way.
Yeah.
And it's never lost on me. But I guess more technically speaking, I'm a venture capitalist. So I have a large venture capital firm that I started about 14 years ago. I invest in companies of all sizes, build them up and sell them. And I build brands of my own. I also dabble in real estate. I joke that if I found out tomorrow that selling hot dogs on the side of the street was the best way to make money, you would see Derik Fay hot dog stands all over Southwest
Derik Dogs.
Write that down. There's already a logo being made. Derik Dogs. Actually, I like that.
Yeah.
And I've been called worse, by the way.
That's good. So with venture capital, I mean, because sometimes it has like a mixed emotion associated with it. Some people can be like, obviously you need money to start a business, and that helps propel you a lot. A lot of people get hesitant because they're like, well, why would I give a portion of something that I'm starting off with? There's also other things where sometimes people can feel like, I guess because you're pushing it so fast, they try and squeeze as much dollar as they can quickly. And, the motto I've heard about like the big ones is like they'll get 10 expecting 9 to fail. And of course that happens with most businesses. What's your thoughts on those fears that people have?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic for a venture capitalist to say that I don't actually believe you need money to start a company. And I say that because I've done it.
Yeah.
I literally came from nothing. But my venture capital firm is a little different in that, and I say this to all of the people that I invest with or invest in, is really what I like to say. The least valuable thing I'm bringing to the table is my capital. And in a lot of cases, I actually don't necessarily invest primarily capital until we get to the scale process. It's more of my knowledge, my experience, and really, if we're being honest, it's sharing my failures.
Yeah.
So I'm really bridging the success gap through all of the things that I've done wrong. And that really is the core value. But if you're talking about your large venture capital firms, you're right. It is a bit of a volume game where I don't know if it's a 9-1 ratio, but it's certainly acceptable 50% ratio.
Yeah.
Where you're investing and hoping that 1 or 2 or 3 of them pop. I'm not really that guy. So anything I'm investing in, first I'm investing in the person over the concept. And my expectation of every investment is for it to be successful on some scale. Not every one of them is going to be a multi-million-dollar company, but the expectation is that every one of them is going to be better than when I entered.
So when, like with expertise, when you're starting off with people, what are some things that, in, I guess, past examples that you've had to bring on to help people, I guess, take them to the next step before even the money gets involved?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest initial concern is the fear, just the fear. There is an almost paralyzing fear of, I'm afraid to build my second, which is really unusual to me.
Build your second?
So someone that has a company, they have one company, they're ready to go, meaning to their second location.
Gotcha.
The next level of scale, the next level of profitability. There's almost a paralyzing fear, and that I said it's always very interesting to me, because once you've already taken that risk of saying, I'm leaving my job, I'm starting a company, it's always very confusing to me why you're then paralyzed again when you've already kind of gone through that process.
Yeah. It feels like they're starting again in a way.
Starting again.
Yeah.
Or maybe even worse, I took this gamble, I succeeded, what if now I fail? Versus the other outlook, which is what I try to encourage, is you took the chance, you didn't fail, imagine what's next.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of it is a mindset change. You know, I meet a young entrepreneur, I know almost immediately, within an hour or so of our first meeting, whether this person is going to really is an entrepreneur through and through, like you and I are.
Yeah.
Meaning, I'm just going to go for it. Now, that doesn't mean irresponsibility, but it does mean I'm going to do whatever it takes. I don't care if I have a shit day or a shit month or even a shit year. It's not going to deter where I'm going. And really, that comes down to the dream and the vision. And so that's what I always invest in. The product or the service or the business really, in my mind, is a byproduct. If you have the right entrepreneur surrounded by the right team, I don't know that you can fail.
Yeah, okay. It's interesting you say so. I remember hearing, I think it was Alex Hormozy, he was saying that most of the billionaires and multi-millionaires he knows, he goes, same thing what you just said, I can identify a superstar very quickly. But they've never, so that they can identify a superstar very quickly, and then, you know, obviously sometimes they end up not being.
Sure.
But they all seem to say unanimously that they've never seen someone that they didn't think was a superstar become a superstar.
Absolutely. And that's that saying, you know, first impressions are really important because it doesn't generally get any better.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's fair.
I mean, that's fair for your first date, your first meeting.
Yeah.
You know,
because you've got less information as well.
Yeah. I mean, you're really you should be really putting your best foot out there. And so if the first time you meet someone, especially in a business scenario where you're asking for capital or asking for just for a partnership, if you don't have your stuff together, if you don't know your numbers, then either you don't care or you don't know, and either way, it's just a problem that you can't necessarily rectify. Yeah.
Knowing your numbers is a big one. That's one that there's someone I'm helping, and they don't think knowing the numbers is important. I'm just like, you know, that like,
it might be the only thing that's important if you had to pick one.
Yeah.
If you had to pick
I'm
one.
like, you know, if you want to eventually sell your company or whatever it is, like if you want to value it, how can you value something, or how can someone buy something and not know the value of it?
Agreed.
You know?
Yes. Now, most people overvalue their company, but shockingly, many, especially smaller business owners, when I say small, I mean maybe 1 to 5 units, or say an EBITDA below 3 million. They undervalue it, not in their mind, but in the way they put together their sale. And a lot of them go to the smaller business brokers, which is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a generally accepted way of valuing all companies across the board. And it certainly doesn't benefit the people that are selling. And to your average seller, you just don't know what you don't know, just like I don't, just like you don't.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've become really good at is selling companies. And so in some cases, I'll have no equity in a company. I'll simply come in and say, you know, have you had valuations of the company? Yes. Okay, what is that? Let's say it's $10. So I'll say I'll take half of every dollar over 10 that I get you, because I know that I can sell it for more than most other brokers can.
Yeah.
And not that I'm a broker. And it's presentation. People buy the sizzle. There's a lot of different ways to go about presenting your company, especially to bigger buyers, that can optimize value. And sometimes you get more for your company than it's worth, as you should.
Sometimes that's nice.
Sometimes it's very nice. Yes.
So let's see. So, I mean, you spoke about the sizzle. Obviously, like marketing's the biggest thing, perceptions of everything. Do you, when you're coming on with a company and you're looking at their marketing strategies, do you ever go like, hey, like a lot of this stuff, what you think is working? Because one thing I find with marketing companies, they get really caught up in the product and they try and sell the product, usually with shit that people don't care about. Agreed. So like one with the pest control, for example, that I help, it's my father-in-law's business and he's been really successful. We're helping it scale even to the next-ish level. As much as he's willing to prepare, like, you know, just it's his son-in-law, like the amount of trust he's given me is quite extreme. Especially like most of his staff are just like, Blake, how are you making him do this stuff? I'm like, I'm a bully. Maybe, I don't know.
More like charismatic, but we'll go with bully.
I think I'm a bully with him. A charismatic bully.
I like that.
We'll go with that.
That'll get you very far in life. Yes.
So, and yeah, so one of the things he always would do is like, he'd market what he would care about. You know, like, oh, this has a great system of like dual tanks, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, Steve, all I give a shit about, will you get rid of my bugs?
That's it.
That's all I care about.
That's right.
You know, I don't care that you use some crazy great system, blah, blah, blah. What I care about is, are you going to get rid of them? How well are you going to get rid of them? And how fast is it going to be?
That's right.
And do you find a lot of businesses get caught up in the thing they care about versus the thing their customer cares about?
Almost absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In my career earlier, I found myself doing the same thing. And when I made that transition out of, hey, this is what I would like, this is what I would like to see, this is what I think is cool and appealing, things shifted for me.
All right, so this is a quick ad break. First one I've done in here, and it's because I finally got a sponsor, and that sponsor is me. A lot of people have been asking me, Blake, what is it you do? They think I do a podcast and that's all I do. But the reality is I actually create content for businesses on social media that will actually build a proper relationship with your audience instead of it just being pretty stuff. Because the reality is I don't do content for you. I do content for your customers. One major thing I've noticed in the Southwest Florida area is that there's a lot of great videographers, cinematographers. There are some great ones around here. But what is missing is the way in which they create that content to communicate with the right audience for your company, whether it's air conditioning, whether it's roofing, it could even be real estate. They're not leading with what is going to interest the customer. Instead, they're leading with what interests the company. The problem is now, though, with that, if you're talking about yourself, you're going to miss out on actually reaching the people that are going to buy your shit. So if you want to find out a little bit more information about how your business can reach the right people, hit the link in the description of this podcast. It'll say skymediahouse.com or hit me up on Instagram at I'm Blake Doyle. Slide in my DMs and I'll get back to you to show how you can actually reach the right people for your company so that you can build a relationship with the customers and make sales a lot easier because there's not many people doing it in this area. Now let's get back to the show.
And not just from a marketing perspective, from a consumer-facing perspective, from my employee perspective. So, and I tell everybody this, well, everyone that'll listen. The bigger your company becomes, the less important you become. And if you don't grab onto that, it's not universally, but it certainly hinders at the very least your success.
Yeah,
and can get in the way completely. Big success can create big egos, and I've never seen that go well. But even if you don't go that far, what I mean by the bigger your company becomes, the smaller your presence should become, certainly doesn't mean that you're working less. It just means you need to step back and delegate and empower your people because when you're scaling, no one person has the bandwidth to create a massive company in and of themselves, right? And so, again, I learned that the hard way and literally was working 20 hours a day. That's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but as much as I
Very
could.
close.
As much as I could, right?
Yeah.
And I had a staff around me, and one of my now very good friends who's been with me for a very long time, COO of a different company, certain companies with me, came to me and said, listen, you're great at what you do, but I'm great at what I do too. Can you please let me do my job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at first, I wasn't angry, but it almost felt like an assault.
Yeah.
But I think that's because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I was just afraid to let go. And when I did, things changed fast and really exciting. And so now that's my go-to. And that's not me trying not to be super involved, and it's not trying to take workload off of me. But your company becomes more than you and really successful when you allow everyone inside of your company to have the feeling of ownership.
Yeah.
And the feeling that their opinion matters. And if someone can come just to work every day and feel like what they do matters, and that doesn't matter whether it's a minimum wage or a C-suite executive, they have to feel that way. I would rather have somebody work happy than work hard, if that makes sense.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, they end up better results if they're happy.
Oh, 100%.
I find that
That's
most people are driven, unfortunately, by fear of losing more than fear of gaining. I learned this when I was doing network marketing. Network marketing, the structure typically is like you have to motivate people to go from zero to something. After I think I did it for about 18 months. And I was crushing sales. Even people that have been doing it for a while, they're like, how do you sell so many things? And I'm like, this is what I do. But I quickly realized in order for me to build that business, it's very hard to build people on the next step. At least the subconscious thing.
Sure.
Consciously they can be like, yeah, I want to make $1 million. It's like, yeah, but do you know the steps between that?
Of course not. Yeah.
No, but or they kind of do, but they're just not prepared to do it. Right. And that's when I shifted to, I have to be, I guess, the leader in a way, lack of a better word, because I know that it sucks that most people are led by the fear of losing a job, but you're not leading with fear, because that's the worst thing to lead with, but you're leading with an enjoyable job that they're scared of losing that fun job subconsciously.
Yeah.
Which sucks. I wish people could be motivated to be what's next,
Yeah, I just wish people would believe more in themselves just inherently. And I don't know if it's a byproduct of social media or schooling system or parental. It's something somehow my delusional confidence just allowed me to skip right over.
Yeah.
But I feel it with my employees. I feel it with just people that come up to me and ask questions like, I'm sure, how could you ever have achieved this?
Yeah.
And I tell them, I have done nothing that you or anyone can't do. Now, have I been willing to make sacrifices that other people maybe would not? Sure. But it's not like this magic pill or this magic story or this magic thing that no one else can do. So yeah, it's interesting.
Would you see my tweet the other? Oh no, tweet the response to that comment on my stories. It was one thing. It was probably one I got the most reactions from. My YouTube channel with the clips for this. Yeah. I can't remember what it was. It was Brad or it was Josh Marzuko. And one of the comments was, I'm going to start a YouTube channel as well and just do shitty clips that have no context. And I wrote back, I'm like, you should.
I did,
but you probably won't.
You probably won't.
Because I feel like that sums up most people is like, we all know what we should do, but what 99% of people won't do it, and then explain why it was easy for the 1% to do it.
Yeah. And why do you think that is?
It's a coping mechanism.
I think so.
It's a coping mechanism to justify the laziness that we inherently have. Yeah. And also it's a lack of understanding of knowing the steps involved, I've had that conversation with many people before. They're like, man, they just seem like that's right. It was my wife. She was watching one girl, and this girl makes like multiple six figures a year. And her whole marketing thing was like, I just never work a day in my life. And like, she's doing all this shit when she talks lives and everything. And I'm watching this going, this chick's full of shit. Right. I'm like, what's she doing right now? So they said, what do you mean? I'm like, she's on a live selling her shit.
That's right.
What's that? That's fucking work.
Right.
And she's like, I never work a day. I'm like,
you're working.
It's that saying that I can't, like, it's like, find what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's like, find what you love and you'll never feel like you're working a day in your life. That's the whole sentence.
That is it.
Like, shit, this is work right now, but it doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it.
Right. And that's what I said to my wife in this, I guess this micro example is because this girl sells like courses, how to scale your business online through yoga or whatever it is. Something spiritual based. And you can tell they make all the quick sales when the internet was on the rise, and everyone's like, yeah, I'm going to get quick, rich quick. And now it's like, you can tell all this backlash is starting to happen. This girl, and she's just like, you got to fucking work, blah, blah. I'm like, that was an interesting twist.
That changed quickly.
Yeah, that escalated.
You can't just buy the book.
No. And that's the thing.
Jeez.
Yeah. And it's funny because I use investment as a fearful motivator to make me go to the next step. Mm-hmm. So like I just bought a $16,000 course. First statement I told myself that made me not even flinch was, if I don't think I can make this back, I shouldn't be working for myself, And 2, when you spend that much money, you're figuring out how to make that back as fucking quick as possible in a good way.
That's so funny you said that. So I didn't think other people did things as foolish as that. And what I mean by is, on my way up, I would buy a car or a home just maybe a little bit outside of my comfort zone for the exact same reason.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily, there was nothing wrong with having a nice vehicle, but it was more to it than that for me. When I found myself getting comfortable, I would do things like that, or I would take a tour of a home that I couldn't afford, or I would go to look at a car at a Bugatti that I couldn't afford, and it inspired me. It pissed me off that someone
can do it
and I wasn't.
Yeah.
So it inspired me a different way. I never had that jealousy thing. You have it, I don't. You have it. Good for you. What did you do?
Yeah, that's the thing. How do you do it?
What are you doing? Right. And by the way, I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
It might take me a week, it might take me a month, it might take me a year, but I'm going to do it. And I think if people understood the power of that positive self-talk, it would be a game changer.
Yeah. It's funny you said you would buy like an expensive car or something, because I heard that recently where there was like, do what you did in order to get, like, to continue what you're doing. Most people get to a certain spot and then they're like, or they don't, and they forget, we've gotten to, like, I've made $2 million this way. Now I'm going to mix it up. It's like, why? Fucking double down on what's been working. Like, you've made 2 from that. How do you make 4, 5, 20?
Often it's just continuing to do what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And so one of the things, obviously a big motivator for a lot of people is scarcity. Like people that come from nothing, they either go one of 2 polar opposites. This is how life is, or fuck that, I'm not living like that ever again. And the thing is, like, you got to hold on to that once you get the thing you never had. And so some of them, like, you see this with certain artists that when they were talking about this in this podcast, and it's that, fuck, I have X amount in my bank, I'm just going to spend it, so now I'm freaking out again, and now I'm still working because I haven't got the thing. And so they've always got that drive. And obviously, like, all right, you can bring in 10 grand a month. That's great. I'm going to spend that 10 grand straight away on an investment on a course that's going to make me learn something. But now I'm like, oh shit, I got to make that back faster. So the next month I make 20 grand. And now I'm like, that's my new norm. I need to make 20 grand the next month.
Yeah.
And that's the scarcity thing that I kind of try and lean into.
Yeah, I don't know if I lean into it. I would say that I was forced into it. And so regardless, and I people have asked me what kind of keeps me going, and the answer is I'll never not be that poor kid from Rhode Island. It is an asset in the manner that you just spoke of, where it keeps me driving. It's a liability in the sense that no matter what I achieve, before I even celebrate that I've achieved it, I've already made myself feel bad that I haven't achieved the next level.
Do you get a lot of people around you as well saying, like, you just never really sit and enjoy it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Less now.
Because they get it, I guess?
Well, because I'm trying to do it more now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm 44 this year, but I really hadn't gone on any meaningful vacation until 2 or 3 years ago. Which is crazy to think.
Have you never tried to leverage vacation?
How so?
So, like, so obviously being from Australia, it's been a blessing moving here in the last 14 months, because it's like I've now got extra hurdles that I need to achieve. So, like, it's like you sort of figure out the map you've got for your life and being like, all right, how do I achieve this so I've got this? One of them is I need to be able to visit my family 1 month a year. How do I do that? How do I build a business that can leverage that possibility where going for 4 weeks, because it's not a close trip. It's like 26 hours of travel time. I'm not going there for 5 days. How do I create a product and a service and a business that is independent of location? And therefore it makes you sort of figure out how to fit that in. Like if I go start a plumbing business, I'm never leaving,
You're never.
you know?
Right.
So yeah, like those little hurdles are what allow me to sort of start thinking, all right, this is what I want to achieve. How can I do it where I've not got that problem? So where I started off was, that's why I got into content.
Yeah.
Because I can
do it anywhere.
I was just thinking tax deduction. I'm like, oh, I can film while I'm on while I'm on location,
Good point.
create content from that. And I'm like, you know, I had to do it to show people this area. And
Travel expense. Yeah. That's smart. That is smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in that regard, I'm doing it more now because in my earlier part of my career, I was creating brands from the ground up, which required all of me. Required me to be present, required to be on site, required construct, all of that type of stuff. Now in the next phase of my career, I'm not necessarily the day-to-day guy, although sometimes I still do brands from the ground up, but it does allow me to do that, right? I can work from Australia, I can work from LA, I can work from Texas. And I'm trying to, and I'm doing more of this thing that I call shadow CEO, which is I'm coming in and helping CEOs without people knowing that they're requiring help. So, yeah, because a lot of CEOs, myself or anyone, from time to time we need insight that we just can't get from ourselves.
Yeah,
and a lot of times they're unwilling to ask it of even their C-suite team. So I stumbled into this with a CEO that I knew, and then I just started quietly offering these services. And it's shocking how many high-level CEOs want someone to come in and just evaluate what's going on without anyone necessarily knowing about it. From a financial health standpoint, from a scalability standpoint, from a staffing standpoint. And the one thing kind of going full circle to where we started, that is the biggest problem with a lot of them is how they treat their people. Or worse, how their people perceive they're being treated. Because most of these, if you ask your average CEO, I treat my people great. Okay.
but they never do research.
How? What do you do? Well, that it's okay. Well, let's dig into that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's everyone thinks about running a successful business. It's numbers, and look, all of those things are true. But the most overlooked thing is culture. If you don't have culture, and I think it was Amosi or his wife that talked about it not that long ago, culture versus talent, and it was actually his wife. And she was right. Culture beats talent every time.
Yeah.
Every time. It's not even close. Yeah.
Because it would come down to as well, like, when, again, that fear of losing.
Yeah.
I love being in this team. I need to make sure I can perform so I have a place in this team and family and whatever.
That's right.
Because that's what when I came in with the pest control, it was a classic thing. I could see person A complaining about stuff, person B. It was never that maybe they were the problem. And so I had to come in and it was unsolicited feedback, slowly just wedging my way in, because obviously it's my family, the in-laws, and I was like, I needed to slowly wedge it in and slowly move it. So one example, this is where a lot of people I think forget is they forget where it started and they blame everyone else. So one example was, they just come and slap it on my desk.
That's right.
And I go, well, do you do it? She goes, well, I have to. I'm like, up.
Yeah.
But do you do it? And she's like, yes. And I go, so why wouldn't I put it on your table? And she's like, huh? Well, it won't get done if I don't do it. I'm like, yeah, well, because the next day when something's behind, they're getting in trouble for it. They're going to start doing it. And I go, it's not their fault either. It's two parties of tango. Say my threshold's here of being overworked. And I'm like, I need some help. Fine, I'll do it. Now my threshold's here. Now it's here. Now it's here. Now it's just so normal where it's like, why'd you put it on a table? Oh, she does it.
That's right.
And I go, now you've got to do the reverse. That didn't happen quickly.
It's top behavior.
You got
inch by inch.
Yeah. And, obviously other different things. But as a result, they were saying now, they're like, this is the longest time we have not had a problem.
Really?
Yeah. And we've been able to scale their staff by about 30 to 50% in 9 months.
That's impressive.
Because it was just like, okay, this is what needs to be changing. It's going to take some time. And also KPIs. Mm-hmm. Everyone thinks that people don't like KPIs. I'm like, they fucking love it.
They need them.
When they can see progression, they're
That's
like,
right.
yeah, like even when you think, like, unless there's someone who's like 60 who's like, I don't give a shit. You know, like most people like that simple KPI, like, hey, you did this last month.
That's right.
Like, really? And you did this month.
I can do that.
Yeah.
And often your top performers, who you would think wouldn't want the KPI, actually the ones that desire it
they are hungry
the most.
for it.
Give me something so I can show you what I've done.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And look, I like it. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
Because it's about achieving.
Exactly. Yep. And like, look, 80% of people are not going to get the results you want, but they will be the foundation that build it for the 20%. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've noticed with this team is like between 12 techs, one is like for reviews, say for example, our goal was to double their history of reviews. They had a history of 79.
Okay.
So far this year, they've had 243 or something in 9 months again.
Oh, wow.
So it went up by a little bit.
Yeah, that's...
But like probably 140 of them were from one person.
Wow.
And then the other 40 are from another person and then spread out across the rest.
That makes sense.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that gets, and you might be able to add on this, is like sometimes the managers will be like, why is no one else doing it? I'm like, who gives a shit?
Right.
The other guys are the foundation for this guy to perform.
That's
and
right.
the secondary guy to perform as well. Even if these guys do one each, that's one more than last year. And
That's right.
8 people doing one thing is 8 times more things than you.
Than it was before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that happen as well where they want everyone to rise, not sort of see that there's a beautiful little like bell curve in a way?
Yeah, I think the expectation is flawed, right? Mm. And you're never going to get, like you said, you're never going to get that other 80% to perform at that high level. But like you said, it's just about optimizing that other 80%. Just like there's the reason there's a 1% of CEOs and C-suite. It doesn't necessarily mean that the other 99 or 80% are not important to the company. In fact, you could argue that they are as important or more.
Yeah.
There's a different ceiling for everybody. And typically, and for the life of me, I can't think of it right now, a little brain fart, but there is a philosophy that you take someone, you promote them, you keep promoting them until they fail, then you drop them back down, and that's where their career is optimized.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Like giving them the next step.
That's right. You wouldn't use KPIs for this, but for lack of a better description, you keep setting these goals. And so if 1 month I had 10 units of sold, and then you jumped up to 12 and I hit 12, and then you get to 8, you hit the 16, then you hit 17, then you set it to 18, and then they do 17. And then you keep it at 18 and they do 16. You go, okay, well, listen, now you're demotivating that person rather than motivate them. So you set it back to the last level they achieved, and they keep getting that feeling of achievement over and over and over, and that person is considered optimized.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's very similar to something I always try and do. Like, I mean, when I use weight loss as an example, like I want to lose 20 pounds. We get so emotionally involved, and it's like, we know the next 10 steps. We're like, oh, you're going to do this.
Right.
And then it quickly becomes, it's not about them losing weight. It's about me being able to say I helped them lose weight.
Sure.
And what problem with that is like where that cycle happens is all of a sudden I'm so emotionally involved more than them that when they start lacking off, I'm like, no. That now I'm bullying them.
That's true.
And so I gave this advice to a lady before because she was trying to get her friend to lose weight. I'm like, just give her the one step. Give her step 1. You know what the next are, but to save your emotional capacity and energy, just give her the next step, which is, all right, for the next 4 weeks, you're going to go to the gym once a week or twice a week, maybe. Yep. That's all you're doing. Yep. Message me when you're there.
Don't change your diet. Don't drink more water. Agreed.
Just do one.
Yeah.
And in 4 weeks, come back to me.
Yeah.
And if they don't, who gives a shit?
Okay.
You're still going to be friends. You couldn't even
do that. That's right. Yeah,
that's
right.
And for me, at least, or for this girl, I was like, you've only expelled this much mental energy.
Right.
And you're also, the group beauty is you're not emotionally, because you're emotionally attached to result 10.
Yeah.
20 pounds losing. 20 pounds lost. If I'm only emotionally attached to them going to the gym for twice a week for 4 weeks and they don't do it, I'm like, now we're still friends. It's cool though.
It's also the only way somebody really can succeed, because I've got a background in fitness as well. And the biggest mistake trainers, life coaches, they make is, like you said, they give them the whole thing. It's unachievable.
Yeah.
It's just unachievable. And there is obviously parallels with business too. I mean, you can't start a company and say, I'm going to be $1 billion company and only look at that. I mean, there's no chance, right? So it's very much the same thing. You're setting somebody up for failure by doing that. Emotional ties aside, right?
And it's exhausting too. If that person hasn't mentally been there before,
yes,
it's like, that's why they say, like, someone that's made 100 million, they can go to zero. They'll make that back 10 times quicker,
right?
Because they've seen that,
traveled the path.
Yeah. So with companies like, what's Cali something? You guys have a new
Cali Coffee.
That's it.
Yeah.
Run me through that. I had a look at it. It looks really cool. What would, like, I mean, as much as you can tell, but what's been their story?
Yeah, 2 founders. I can't tell too much.
Okay.
But I can talk about Cali Coffee as a company. 2 founders, young entrepreneurs. Two entrepreneurs, by the way, maybe the 2 most talented, instinctual entrepreneurs I've ever come across in my life. Walk-up coffee concept, so you can't go inside, drive up, walk up.
So like a hole-in-the-wall style situation?
Hole in the wall, yeah, maybe 800 to 1,500 square feet. They have 5 units on the other coast, each one of them doing between 2.5 and 3 million out of 1,000 square feet with 30 to 40% margin, which is incredible.
Yeah. What's typical for a coffee shop?
So a busy Starbucks does maybe 3 million to 3.5.
And what's their margin typically?
Pretty similar.
Okay.
Maybe 30%. Right?
Yeah.
So they're playing in the big boy leagues.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, some of the locations they're looking at, tenant landlords are actually passing on other entities.
Really?
To go, sure. Why would you do that? And you would think, well, you've got this huge entity like a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts. Well, that comes with inherent challenges and inherent demands and a lot of processes to get things done. I'm not saying that that's bad, as it should be, but depending on the landlord, you may choose to go another way. In the case of default, in the case of all of that type of stuff.
So that's good, because that's a lot of opportunity now that I think a lot of people wouldn't understand. They think, I'm going up against Starbucks. But if you got the opportunity of, look, proving the concept, but less of a headache for the landlord. Against the landlord's also your customer.
100%.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you shouldn't look at it as I'm going up against Starbucks. You should say look at it as I'm going up against Starbucks.
Yeah, and
in
what do
a really
I offer that they
exciting way?
Yeah.
Because what they do, and I've built companies very successfully this way, they do all of the work for you. So they spend tons of money on figuring out what side of the street you should be on in this town. Where is the optimal location? They're going to do all the marketing and drive the consciousness of coffee is available in this radius. And so I have built companies in the past where I identify that big gorilla in the industry, and then I open up my locations about 6 months after they do in that proximity. And have done very, very well. And listen, that's not my genius idea. Look at Walgreens and CVS, Burger King and McDonald's. You see them right across the street from each other. There's a reason. Yeah.
That's interesting, because I was listening to Grant Cardone talk about that recently, where when he's trying to see if something's a good investment, he goes to the big he goes to the big banks, and they're going to put like 12 underwriters and all this stuff on it, put all this money into investigating if it's good, and then they go, all right, we'd like to do it. And he goes, fantastic, I know it's a good one. I'm going to go to bank number 2. They go and do it, spend all this money investigating it, and they're like, all right, we're in 2. He's like, all right, that's 2, that's good. This is probably a good investment. And he goes, why the fuck would I pay when they're going to pay for me?
Agreed.
And one of his things as well is he looks into like the big chains, because they've done the research to see if this is a good location. And so he's just basically outsourcing other people's research for free. Absolutely. And it sounds similar to you. It's like use the big honchos. Absolutely. They wouldn't be there if it wasn't profitable.
Well, it still doesn't mean you go into it blind.
Of course.
But it is a very strong indicator of success.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Interesting.
I can speak more freely about the brand that I built, Around the Clock Fitness, which is a local brand here. So, and I started back in Southwest Florida. My first one here was 2005, 2006 in Cape Coral. Not a lot of gym around in that time. The big boy was LA Fitness. And so I was the only other person and the only independent owner of any health clubs that were the same size of LA Fitness. I was building clubs 30 to 70,000 square feet in my early 20s. Yeah, I went all in.
Yeah.
But I saw a hole in the market, and I saw a company that did a lot of things great initially. The outside of their buildings look remarkable. Their parking lots are done and designed very well. They spent a ton of money marketing in the beginning. They generate all of this excitement about, I want to get healthy, I want to get in shape. So my philosophy was I would build my Around the Clock Fitnesses within 1 to 3 miles of any LA Fitness that had opened in the past 6 months. Because one thing, my opinion, that LA Fitness does not do very well, because they're scaling so quickly, is they build the location and they're gone, which means the team on the ground feels somewhat neglected, and often some of the equipment inside is not kept up very well.
Yeah.
And so 6 to 9 months is just enough time for someone that's paying to feel a little sideways about that.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there's a brand new, sexy mousetrap, family-owned, customer service-driven, boom.
Yeah.
And it just works. And that's applicable to any company.
Yeah. That's because the only reason I have 2 gym memberships on the same corner, basically. I got Crunch because I like it, and I got eSporter, rest in peace, LA Fitness.
Yeah, they still own it.
Yeah. They're just pretending.
Rebranding.
But I only because of the sauna. Because it's cheaper to have a $20 a month membership that I can visit for the sauna than have a sauna.
Sure.
But you're right. Like, their customer service is by far the worst. I don't even sign in anymore. I just walk in.
It's crazy.
And, you know, and then if I do have an interaction with them, I'm like, you're a dick. Like, one of them, I tried to get in once at it closed at 7 p.m. I get there at 6. Doors are locked. Everyone's inside.
Yeah.
I'm looking in. I'm like banging on the door like a schmuck. And the guy like pretends like he doesn't hear me. A lady walks out and she looks at me confused. Like, why is this guy standing out like an idiot? I'm like, I fucking know. I walk in. The guy's like, hey, we're about to close. I'm like,
In
an hour? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I'm going in the sauna for 20 minutes. He goes, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, I'm not, for me to be real rude to people that are working, because I usually have an empathy. I'm like, look, these rules are not yours, whatever.
Right.
But I was just like, all right, fuck off. Just kept walking in.
Yeah, well, you have an hour.
Yeah. And then so I'm in the sauna and he's berating people in the sauna as well. Like, hey guys, just so you know, like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And as I leave, he goes, yeah, I'm impressed. And I'm like, don't give a shit. And just walked out.
That's crazy. But you know what? That's not their fault. Okay, well, in some cases, that might
think
be
it's
that
his
guy.
fault.
Might
It's
be
his
that
fault.
guy's fault.
He's got a little bit weird tweaks to him.
But if there was a general manager on site who felt supported and loved their job, that guy either wouldn't exist or wouldn't act that way.
Yeah.
Right? And what's good about that is if you're in the market of fitness and you see that, there is a way to optimize your company in that way.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is all you need to do.
Yeah.
You know?
I heard there was a thing recently. It was like, your goal is to create raving fans.
Yes.
And that's something that I've taken on board recently. Because originally it was like that anyway. I did a tweet late a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, the most terrifying moment for me is the day after I get a deposit. Because the sale's fine. Like, I have no commitment yet. I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, I'm chasing. And the second I got the deposit, I'm like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, now I have to really nail it. And I never want to lose that though.
Yeah.
Because I think the second you lose that is when you stop getting raving fans.
God, what a great observation. And it hits a chord with me because when I started that in particular company, you could cancel anytime, which back then in the gym industry was unheard of.
Yeah.
It took an act of God to cancel your membership. And everyone that I hired and everyone that worked for me always said, what are you doing? You're losing money. And I said, no, I want someone to feel that they can leave at any time. But more importantly, I want you to understand that they can leave at any time. So you need to act accordingly. And it made such a difference. Such a difference. So...
Yeah, that's those type of people that they chase the contract.
Yeah.
You're roped in.
Yeah.
Fuck you now.
Yeah. But it goes back to, I wanted raving fans.
Yeah.
And now we're in a world where if someone says something negative from a corporate standpoint, it's just deleted. Versus leaning into that, because that's where you learn.
Yeah.
And I posted something about it not that long ago. You don't learn anything from success. That's a little untrue, but you learn more from your failures, or you learn more from the customer that says, you suck.
Yeah.
Why? So either there's no validity there, or maybe there is something there. Maybe there is someone that treated a customer like shit at the front door, or maybe something is wrong with your service. And so I always took that as an opportunity to I would respond to these things, find out what it was. A great example was my daughters and my 2 young daughters own Rita's Italian Ice. So they're 13 and almost 16. They've owned it for a couple of years.
They're in their own company.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I'm a very, very proud dad. But someone complained, grand opening in Port Charlotte. I didn't get the icy that I wanted. The lady at the thing was awful to me. There was a line around the bill, all of these things. So we said, okay, I'm texting online, responding. Next time you come, well, that's not good enough. I'm never coming back. Well, what about this? That's not, you guys suck. It's awful. So I asked my daughters, what should we do? And they said, well, why don't we bring it to her? And I thought, well, that is incredible.
Yeah.
So we got a gallon of exactly what she wanted, and I had one of my associates drive it to her home. You want to talk about creating a raving fan? That person that maybe the average entrepreneur would either delete or ignore now comes there on a regular basis, posts on a regular basis about how great we are. So there's always an opportunity to turn a negative into not just a positive, but potentially a foundation for what your company should do, because I saw it in the eyes of the people that work for us. So over a $6 treat, the owner is willing to pay me to drive a free gallon of ice 20 minutes away to someone. Wow. Maybe I should act that way in the store.
Yeah.
So,
do you find as well, maybe because it's like, I mean, and I'm not saying this particular person, but like when someone is that emotional, they're going to swing one way, but then there's that power to swing them back even further. Like, I guess if you think political stance, like the most crazy on either side, they're the most loyal to their ideology, even though it doesn't make sense. And they're the most hateful to the other side, even though it doesn't make sense.
absolutely.
So that makes sense, actually. You could, because I always thought, like, in that instance, I would have probably just been like, this is someone that's never going to be happy. But it's good to test that.
Well, you could argue that the act that we did was as much for everybody else and all of the other customers as this person. Because listen, of course I considered this person was just batshit crazy, right?
Yeah.
But everybody else is watching how I'm interacting.
Of
so what
course.
I've done is diffuse the nonsense. So I've offered you everything I can. Now I'm offering to come to your home and deliver it to you personally. So now whatever.
And did you ask as well, or did you just turn up?
We told them that we were coming.
Okay, I was going to say, that'd be like, surprise.
Yeah, no, I wasn't shiny. No, get out. But so what I've done with everyone else that's viewing and watching is they all now go, well, what else could he do? The company went as far as they could. So for the people that were like, yeah, she's right, it was as much for all of them as it was for her. Because she could have told me to go screw, but I still went beyond expectations.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Because the greatest fear a lot of people have is, if I do this for that person, then other people will see a loophole and start complaining.
That is a common sentiment, but I don't find it necessarily to be true. And honestly, it's a case-by-case basis. So if everyone all of a sudden starts saying, I hate everything, I want a free gallon of ice, okay, well, maybe that wouldn't be the case, but I've never had that experience.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Yeah. So with do you ever get on board with a company that has potential but a bad culture?
Often.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How do you shift it?
But first, that's a lot of the times why people come to me.
Okay.
Is they're not identifying it necessarily as a bad culture. Something's just not right.
Yep.
Right? And how to fix it is it's usually the owner or the leader.
It always falls down.
Everything flows down.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that can be an absentee owner. That can be a micromanaging owner.
Oh, they're the worst.
It could be an owner that, and these are things we talked about, an owner that is driving what they want and they think is best, not necessarily what's best for the consumer or the customer. It can be an owner that is negligent to their employees. So I don't think that changing culture is a difficult thing so long as you have an owner that's willing to recognize what the real root of the problem is.
Yeah.
Because often it's the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it isn't the owner has the power to change it. And so if that hasn't occurred, that's still on the owner. And I have been in situations where I've pointed out the very obvious issues, which is it's you.
Yeah.
And a lot are very receptive to it. I'm decent at delivering bad news. Right? I like to say that I can scold somebody and they'll say thank you. And then 3 days later they're like, wait, did he just tell me to F off? Like, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know that shifting culture is a very difficult thing. It is identification, setting the plan for how to change that, and execution.
Yeah.
Right? But none of that can happen without the 100% support of the owner. And it has to be in perpetuity, right?
Yeah.
You can't fix the culture, exit, and then have the owner just go back. Like, okay, I'll step out and let you do what you do and fix it, but I'm not changing.
Yeah.
Well, then there's just no point. There's just no point. So I can't come in and change the culture for you, which I've done before and learned the hard way. So I change the culture. You just go into the background. Now everything's great. Okay, great. Thank you for your time. And maybe I've got equity or maybe I've been paid. And then the owner comes back. And it's just over. It's just the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So you have to fix the core root issue.
Yeah.
And that's not always possible.
Well, you're requiring changing a lot of background habits and habits of thought.
Yes.
Like that's some things that I'm always juggling with, because this example is always like they're the only one that I really do this in depth. Usually it's just the marketing side and whatever. But you start noticing trends in people, the way they think. And it's like, I've always said most people have what they want to achieve, and there's something there that's like fucking it up.
Yep.
So like, what's an example? A great sales guy. The only issue is he wants to get a certain goal, but his thing is that he is in a race to get to the sale. Yeah. And so that's his thing that I'm like, he still closed really well, but I'm like, man, imagine. And so we had to break some things down, restructure how you structure it, et cetera, like the calls and the flows. And that did wonders. Same as like, there's a few things I can't say on this, so I'll tell you later.
Okay. But you're right.
There's always something.
Rushing to the end it always gets you in trouble. Right?
Yeah.
And it's exciting, especially when you feel like, I've got you, because there is a rhythm to a sale.
Yeah.
There's a rhythm to closing. There's a rhythm to negotiations. And I think only through doing it for a long time are you able to sit back and just ride that rhythm. Versus if you're new, you're not even sure what you feel, but you know it's going your way.
Yeah.
And then you screw it up by going too fast. Like, do you want to buy?
Yeah.
Like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought we had a rapport. I thought we were talking. I thought, So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. And even with managers too, it's like, and thought processes, something starts going a little bit wrong. There used to be more of a gossip culture to like, I think people need stone walls sometimes. So like someone will be like, oh, did you hear about this, and this? I'm like, do I give a fuck?
Matter of fact,
and they're like, oh, huh. And I'm like, even if that guy was that or that, I'm like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, what's the value?
Yeah, I'm like, who cares?
Right.
And same thing with like climbing certain ladders. I love, again, it was this assuming that someone is of blank mindset. He probably, I just don't think he can do it. I'm like, well, have you tested?
Right.
Like, I'm all about, like, if you want to step up, great. Here are the things I want you to execute.
Right.
Now, if you execute them well, more will come. If you don't, you're going to come back down.
Exactly what we talked about.
Exactly. And the psychological reason for that is if we don't give them that opportunity, even if I know they'll fail, or I have like a 99% hunch they're going to fail, I don't want to be the one that's stopping them from where they think they can be. I want their actions to be the thing, because then they can be like, well, he gave me a shot and I stuffed it up.
That's right.
Because now if I don't do that, it's him versus me.
Now it's
my
your
fault. It's my fault. And I did that with one guy. What was the example? The best sales guy, he has a heart of gold. And whenever people are like, oh, I just can't afford it, he's so quickly like, we should do some sort of program where we can give to blah, 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 blah. Obviously, the parameters are, one, it's not his money, so of course you're going to be free with it.
Right.
Two, it's how do you determine someone who's genuinely struggling?
Right.
You know, like, so what he'd been on and on and on for months, you know, everyone would either just sort of be like, oh yeah, and just deflect. And obviously that just builds up resentment. Or they'd be like, no, you can't for this reason. He's like, fuck you. Because he can hear the words, but you can't, they hear the words, but they don't believe it. And so I said to him, I was like, all right, first of all, love what you're doing. I love the fact you want to give. That is so important. I agree with you. It's very amicable. There are a few things we need to figure out, and I think what we need is I want to see you do it, and we'll match what you donate, and that's how we can help.
Yeah.
And he's just like, you know, like I go, look, what about some of your bonuses? Just put a bit aside. And he's just like, you know, well, it's just the money gets spent by the family. And I'm like, well, then put a little bit aside in a different account. It doesn't be a lot.
Right.
Like what? You gotta save $120. If it's 50%, you have to pay 60. So, but the thing was, now it was his money to lose.
Right.
And within 2 weeks, he was like, I almost went to give to someone and I knew she was using me. He wouldn't have seen that before.
Never.
He wouldn't have seen that. And granted, he ended up it took him like 3 or 4 months to find somebody, and he just didn't even ask us for the money. But I've never heard him complain since that we should help more people, because he then understood when he had a dog in the race, what's required to break down if someone's really struggling or they're trying to play the game. Like one lady was deliberately said to her daughter loud enough for him to hear, well, guess you're not going to blah, blah, blah now. And he just was like, she's playing that card against me. But before that, I don't think he would have
recognized it.
He would have heard it, but he wouldn't have heard it.
Yeah.
So yeah, putting that ownership into people but that's hard to recognize how to do that too.
Absolutely.
You know, like most people would just be like, you pay for it then.
Deal with it.
Yeah. So back to the gym.
Yeah.
Was that your first business?
It was my first large business, yes.
What did you do before that?
So, I joke and I saw these cards on here, so I'm going to tell the story. So my first business, and I actually let me start with my first business. So I was in a private school, scholarship kid, right?
I was at private schools, it's fine.
Yeah. No
judgment.
But for a different reason. So poor kid, maybe has some talent. So I go to a Catholic school. And of course, I can't afford to buy the pants that they have. You have to have your hair cut a certain way. This is, I'm 44, so this is a little.
Oh no, that's the same.
The same. Okay.
Private school is the classic free app, but it's not really. You got to pay for the app, and then it's in-app purchases.
Very good. So I'm living in essentially the projects in North Kingston, Rhode Island, and I'm going to an affluent private school. So I don't know if you remember these things called garbage pail kids. These collectible trading cards, right? So when I'm 6 or 7, these are the hottest things in the world. You open them up, it's a sticker and it's a cartoon, but it's like, guy's holding his head and there's blood coming out. And the kids are like, holy shit. Especially these private school kids. So I happened to have them like stuck on a notebook or something. And one kid was like, oh my God, what is that? It's the coolest thing. It's like, oh, it's garbage pail kids. And I had one in my bag. And the kid goes, I'll give you $1 for it. And I was like, okay. Now at the time, 25 cents bought you a pack of 12. So what did I do? I went and started buying packs.
Yeah.
So I started selling these things to the kids at lunch for like $1 or $2 a card. So this went on for like a month until the pastor, the head of the school, realized nobody was eating school lunch because little Derik Fay was coming home with like $80 a day. So they kicked my ass out.
Kicked you out of school?
Kicked me out of school.
Really?
Kicked me out of school.
Wow, they really liked entrepreneurs, huh?
Yeah.
Like, oh,
So-
you have grit and determination, and you think outside the box.
Yeah.
Leave.
Get out. You're incorrigible. That was the sentiment back then. So anyway, I joke, but really that changed the way I thought. In a lot of ways, maybe I can't even identify, but I know that it did. So about 5 years ago, I went back and bought an unopened, like mint 10 PSA graded garbage pail kit, and I have it on my desk at my house. And so my daughters asked me, well, what is that? I said, well, that's why we live in the house we live in. That's how it all started.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that was kind of neat. I went off on a tangent there, but
No, that's a good one. 'Cause it is funny because when people say, like, same as like working for myself, there's no other option.
there never was.
There's never what, like, I started my first business at 9, I think it was, you know, and it was, again, it was just a classic, saw someone else do it. And I'm like, I'll copy and paste that.
Yeah, I can
and it
do
was
that.
like, you know, our gutters are different, or you guys call them curbs. Gutters are different like they got more of a ledge sort of thing. And what these guys were doing was going house to house, and so that, like, in case of an emergency, sometimes seeing the home numbers very hard to see. So they were spray painting just nice clear numbers on your gutter, so that emergency services could identify the address quickly. House to house, $20. And so at 9, I was just like, So I went, got paper, made all the numbers, and I had the system. So it's like, all right, this is where it will go. This is where the square is, blah, blah, blah. And then I just have this vivid memory as my aunt was coming in. I'm like, hey, bye, see ya. She's like, where's he going? Mom's like, he's starting a business.
He's making some money.
Yeah, and
I love that.
I still remember the first, like, there was one lady that did it, and she was like, you must be getting a lot right now. I'm like, you're my only one. You know?
But isn't it interesting that at that young of an age, yourself, myself, and so many other kids are able to identify, I can make some money on my own.
Yeah.
And adults lose whether it's through fear or responsibility, they lose that openness to, hey, there are so many ways to make money.
Yeah.
And it does start with that first transaction. Instead of saying, well, if I do that, and Gary Vee's a great one, right? If I go to the yard sale and I put it on eBay and I make $100, what's that going to do for me?
Yeah.
Well, it's the act of doing these things and executing that change your life.
Yeah.
It's not about that $100, right?
No.
And you know that, and I know that, and I wish that people understood that, right? Okay, so first business, I moved to Fort Myers in 2002. I knew that I wanted to start a management company. Didn't really know what that was, though. Okay, so I took a job at the largest management company in the world, Troon Golf. Okay, at the time, I'm doing very well. I'm making, in my early 20s, $600,000-$700,000 a year consistently, and cutting off nice real estate deals as I go. So I take a job making $42,000 a year. That's a full-time job at Troon Golf as a director of operations, because I want to know what I don't know. Now, I'm still working. So this is when I told you I was working 20 hours a day. So I would get up in the morning and work from 4 o'clock till 8:30, go to my 9 o'clock job, work till 5, get out of work, and then work as long as I could keep my eyes open on the other stuff.
Yeah.
And I did that. Well, I worked at Troon Golf for 6 months as director of operations. I was like 22 years old. They made me general manager, youngest general manager ever. And then 3 months later, they offered me 4 properties as a regional. And I said to myself, I think I might know what I need to know. I don't want to get stuck in this type of a situation. I hated every second of it because I am the worst employee in the world. I'm the worst. That's
Same.
why I admire my employees, because I could not do what they do for someone else.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely love and appreciate them because I could never do it. I could never do it. So I left that job. Started 3F Management. I started it out specializing in hospitality. So I called it health clubs, country clubs, spas, fitness centers. And I went into these companies and said, there's a board of directors or a C-suite team. Here are all the things I'm going to provide. And you get, they're shaking their head. You're a young kid, whatever. And the inevitable question is, what's the cost? And so this is where I got them. And I said, I'm going to do all this for free. And so you get some people, you get that Okay, well, that's different. And so I've always been really good in numbers. So if you show me numbers, you show me a balance sheet, I can tell you things about your company you don't even know. And I mean within minutes. And so having that skill, I would say, I'm going to do all of these things. And all I ask in return is 50% of any money that I save your company. Now, the bigger the company, the more waste there is. And I'm talking about simple things. I'm talking about changing corporate cell phone plans. I'm talking about changing providers. I'm talking about, and I made a lot of money doing that, but I also had access to large companies, and I saw good things. I saw bad things. I saw things that I would then emulate. I saw how they treated their employees. There was a real estate company in Lehigh Acres. And I'll never forget this, a huge impact on me. Company was very poorly run, just kind of successful because during that time leading up to '08, real estate was just oh my God, just, $1 million a day. But what he did was he threw these quarterly parties for his employees, and he threw the most ridiculous Christmas parties I've ever seen. And I went to them, and I just saw the employees loved him. They didn't like him. They didn't respect him. They loved him. And not just because of the Christmas party, not just because of the party, but there was an open policy that if you need something, don't ask the company. You email me, you come to my office, you ask. And there was an open policy of if you need money, I think it was up to like $1,000. I, the owner, will lend that to you and you will pay it back to me over a term that you can manage. And that was something that I implemented at my first company. I threw ridiculous parties. I had an open door policy. If you needed money, you could come to me and I would lend it to you. And you would think, well, you're definitely going to get burnt. But my willingness to help, almost 95% of all people paid it back, and a lot of them paid it back before they actually needed to.
Yeah.
And so it created this culture of family. No matter how big we became, it still had that feeling.
Yeah.
So that was how 3F management started, and then it just evolved from there. Because I started to make money and started to invest in other companies, and had a ridiculous, crazy real estate deal that happened when I first came here. Which, if you'd like to hear about that, it's worth a listen. So I'm 22 years old. I come to Fort Myers. And I meet the two largest realtors at WCI. Now, at that time, WCI, before all the problems, they were the king of the world. So we're driving to Naples with the two top realtors. I'm trying to meet people, get in the game, don't know anybody here. And they get a phone call on the way to Naples, hey, there's a project I need you to come see. So they say, hey, do you mind if we stop? Yeah, no problem. So it's a condo complex, maybe 300 units. And they're all rentals. So they have this little, empty thing set up, and there's maybe 4 or 5 other, and they say, okay, so here's what's going to happen. We're going to renovate all these condos, and we need you to, how many do you want for your clients? How many do you want? Here's going to be the fair market value. Here's the cost, crazy margin. And I'm thinking, okay, I smell something here. So we go to dinner, come back, I do a little bit of research, and I find out that all of these tenants have first right of refusal if they want to buy that condo, and at a ridiculously discounted rate. Okay? So what do? I draft some letters. Now, this is a story of how I turned about $75 into $5 million. Okay? I drafted some letters to all of the tenants. Great news. You may not be aware of this, but your condo is going to be renovated and transformed into a beautiful unit that you have the first right of refusal to buy. It's going to be a great investment for you. I highly recommend you do it if you have the means. However, if you do not, I would love for you to transfer your rights to me, and I'll give you $1,000 of relocation. Query them out. Cost me about $60. Day one, nothing happens. I'm like, shit, well, that was a good idea. I thought it was a great idea. Oh, well. Day two, about 40 calls. We want to give you our rights, So within a week, I've got almost 205 units that have transferred their rights to me. So that means I had to put about $200,000.
Yeah.
Before that happens, the landlord calls me. I'm suing you. You're out of control. You shouldn't be doing this. It's against the law, which it's not. So we go through that process for maybe a week. The landlord calls me up. What do you want? And I go, well, you're going to make maybe $150,000 on each unit. I said, I'll sign them all back over to you for, I don't know, $25,000 a unit. Deal. So for $60, I made about $5 million.
Nice. Now that is seeing an opportunity.
But that's the whole point of the story.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not about the exit. This one for me, I mean, of course, the execution was important. But my question is, or my statement is, opportunity is everywhere. Right. So you, whoever had in that moment, what would you have done? Right. Would you have seen the opportunity? Would you have gone through with it? So I don't think that makes me special. I think it just means that I'm willing to just go for it. Right.
Yeah. And the worst case scenario is like you get 200 people saying it and you can only afford 10.
Right. Even if you
Or
can
if you
afford
can
even
one.
if you can afford one. Well, that's right.
Yeah.
So for $60, if I had gotten one, I'd have made $25,000
Yeah. For a letter.
for a letter.
Interesting. How did you get the 200 grand?
I didn't need to because I assigned it back to the landlord.
Ah,
He
so
paid it.
you didn't even transfer it across yet. How funny. How funny.
So then I took that was my first large, like, all right, this feels okay.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And then I really started. And then I started investing, and then I started my the health club business, and then things just kind of took off from there.
So that was before the health club business.
It was before.
Interesting. So with that one, because this gym stuff's interesting because it feels like I think there is a lot of overhead to start. What's the process for opening up a gym? At least back then.
Yeah. So obviously you need to find your facility. And so my average gym from a build out perspective was probably $1.5 million to $2 million. $1.5 million to $2 million. If you're starting with a shell, which I did with all of them, you got about another $1 million or so in equipment. Well, this is back then. It's certainly more now.
Yeah.
So you figure each gym costs between $3 and $4 million.
Yeah.
So what I was able to do, and I teach people now, is I was able to leverage really just myself and my ability to deliver concept and deliver myself and deliver how successful I was going to be. And I got my landlords to pay for almost 100% of all of my startup costs. It's something called Tenant Improvement Allowance. Now, Tenant Improvement Allowance is money that the landlord pays you to be an occupant. In a lot of cases, you have to pay that back. But I always structured my deals where I never paid it back, and I still paid fair market lease. And so over the course of all of the gyms that I built, and we're talking, at that time, the cost probably would have been excess of $50 million. I got the landlords to put up 100% of that.
Wow.
100% of that. And then I would just come in and put up my initial operating expenses, my marketing, all of those types of things. Now, of course, if my first gym failed, well, then, shit. I would have been personal guaranteed that lease, and that could have destroyed me.
Yeah.
So there is risk in everything.
But see, that's a motivation too. You can't fail.
You can't fail. You can't. And I tell you, I became damn close with the health club business. No one knows this. My wife at the time does not know this. My kids certainly didn't know. But I was maybe a week away from being completely bankrupt.
Really?
And not because I mismanaged things and not because things weren't going well, but because I scaled a little too quickly. Honestly, within a week of it, and it would have all fallen apart. And I had 3 massively successful companies, and it still could have lost it all.
What was the thing that stopped you from that week? Like what turned it?
Creative financing.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's that?
So I guess, well, let's just talk more about what got me there. So Cape Coral was massively successful. I had just built a second location in Fort Myers. And then I acquired location 3 and was renovating it. So it used to be the Omni. So I acquired that, had the financing set up for it, approved, everything good to go, 2 days away from closing, and bank says, we changed our mind. We don't want to finance gyms. I was like, okay. So then I looked in the bank, and I had like $30,000 more than I needed to buy this health club. I had millions in there, but I had to literally drain my bank account and make sure and hope that over the next 30 days that the money kept coming in. And so, that's one of those defining moments in life, right?
Yeah.
Do you drain it and risk a really good life, or do you go for it knowing that there is an even better life or an even better company? And that's not just for me. At that time, I had hundreds of employees too.
Yeah.
So we know what decision I always make. Right?
Yeah.
I'm more of a jump out of the airplane and find the parachute on the way down kind of guy.
Yeah.
Not for everybody. but kind of how I live my life. And so, yeah, there was that 1 week period of time where it was literally day to day looking at the bank account. Money came in from the deposits, pay the bill. Money came from the deposits, pay the bill. But then, things turned around. Yeah.
Sweet. And are there any open still, or have you since
So
liquidated?
I sold all of them in 2019 to a publicly traded company.
Good timing.
Yes, very good timing. That's very exceptional.
Exceptional timing.
All cash deal.
That is fascinating. Sorry to cut you off. The gym that I worked at before I moved here, they were bought out for multiple, like tens of millions by a bigger company. I'm shit you not, 4 weeks before COVID.
Mine was not 4 weeks, but it was like 3-4 months. So COVID caused that company to go bankrupt.
Really?
So I heard that
He's one good decision from taking off and one bad decision from going down.
Completely destroyed.
Man.
So when I found out that they were closing the gyms, I called the landlords and said, you know me, you know I can operate, you know I'll sign a personal guarantee. Will you give them back to me? 0. Yes. So I took them back, rebranded them, and sold them again 4 months ago.
Not bad. Yeah, it's all about timing, huh?
It is about timing.
Timing, weatherall, and fuck.
You got to work in courage or balls.
Yeah, you need cojones.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a female, there's another term, so I didn't want to be exclusive there. But listen, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
You can be really talented, you can be really smart, you can do everything right and still fail. And that's just a fact of life. And and that is scary. And it's not that I don't get scared. It's not that I don't have doubt, because I do. I've just learned to compartmentalize it, put it over here, shut the door, lock it, and just go. I mean, I know that it's there. I'm looking at it every once in a while, but I'm still pushing forward.
Yeah.
Do
you here's some psychology questions. I have this weird bout of anxiety mixed in with, and it's only when I'm going to sleep or when I'm waking up. It's like when I'm it's like when you're half in and out of sleep.
Yep.
Crazy anxiety.
Almost every morning.
Good.
And
that
I don't know,
and
I don't quite know why. And I'll be honest with you here.
There are times
that I wake up and check my bank account. Now that's because I grew up poor.
Yeah.
I know what I have. There's no concerns here. But there was an irrational fear that, I don't know, what happened overnight? Some money fairy came and took it all away.
Yeah.
Right? It's nonsense. But it's real for me.
Yeah. That's funny. It seems like everyone that does it, I'd like to think it's people that are motivated to never fail. And you obviously will, but you just want to make sure that you're pushing the right way. Because my wife's always like, you have a problem, you have anxiety. I'm like, I'm building shit myself,
right.
Yep. That it is. And you also, the kid, the wife, I'm still building. I have to reach a certain point before I can even apply for a home loan. So we're still living at the in-laws vacation home, which I also don't like because it's a little bit of a safety net. I know that can slightly mess with me. I need danger. But yeah, every time I go to bed, right now, I'm like, who the fuck's going to pay what blah, blah, blah for my program? Yeah. Who's going to do that? No one's going to pay that. That's stupid. And I'm like.
That keeps you sharp.
Yeah.
It keeps you sharp. Yeah.
That's so funny. Because I tell her, I'm like, I swear it's not just me. And it seems like every single person who is successful says the same shit.
Absolutely.
Yep. Crazy anxiety.
It's there. There is a storm beneath this calm.
Yeah.
Right? And if you ask people that'll be honest about it, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
People, how do you stay so calm? Well, it's a facade.
It's a facade.
It's a facade. I'm freaking the fuck out in here.
Yeah. But that's what makes you motivated to do a good job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think if you get too much above your own, be like, yeah, I'm good. Then you start sucking.
I've been there.
Yeah.
And actually, very recently, I taught myself a lesson that I wished I didn't have to teach myself.
I need more anxiety.
No, I had my first major loss. Major loss. $20 million.
Wow, okay.
Major loss. And honestly, as I've had time now over the past 6 months or so to really dig into it, it's my fault. Now, if you want to get analytical and look at the facts of what went down, 99 out of 100 people would say it's not your fault. I submit that it was my fault because I was goddamn lazy. I pushed off tasks that I should have been doing to other people. So the difference between delegating tasks that should be delegated and delegating tasks because you just rather do something else.
Yeah.
And so I found myself in a position where for a small window of time, just enough time to hurt, that I got maybe a little too high on myself. And I said, well, if I'm involved, like, it's me. I'm involved. That's enough. Yeah, guess what? Business has a way of kicking you in the teeth when you act that way. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Maybe not the best thing, but it was a very...
10 would have been nicer.
Yeah, I mean, if I could have learned it for $10, that'd have been great. But what it's done, it's reinvigorated me. Not that I wasn't always pushed, but it's reinvigorated me to go back to the front lines. And rather than the way I've led my entire life is shoulder to shoulder with my people versus wherever the hell I was, up in a goddamn private jet where everyone was doing the work. And so I'm glad that it happened quickly and it didn't stretch out to a point that it really could have hurt me. Yeah. And I'll never find myself back there again.
Yeah. It is funny how many people are like, and I guess you're in a blessed place where that wasn't entirely everything. Yep. But I think even if it was, you'd be like, that'd probably make you even hungry. Like,
oh, it would.
You know?
Yeah. Well, listen, I went through a period of time where I was depressed.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be normal for a lot of people.
Oh.
I mean, shit.
But I've not say I've never been depressed, but I've never been so depressed that I was like laying in bed thinking, I was so mad. Now I know I was so mad at myself because all I had to do was nothing and I would have never lost that.
Yeah.
I had to do nothing. I just had to do nothing. Think about that. Do nothing and keep $20 million.
Yeah.
But instead, I got sloppy and arrogant. I invested the money. I didn't pay attention and I got what I deserved. That's a lesson.
Yeah. I think people need to hear those losses because I feels like most people only see your wins.
Of course.
This is the funny thing. It's like, I swear, and I guess it's because, I mean, you're probably the same, but like, you know you're here. Mentally, you're here.
Yep.
But people think you're like here, if that makes sense. Like, so like, I always feel like people think I'm further ahead than I really am.
Okay.
My brain is like, I want to be beyond where they think I am.
Right.
But I'm not even where they think I am.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I have an interesting take on that, and it is that people actually give me more credit than maybe I'm even due. If that makes
That's what
sense.
I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they think I'm ahead of where I am.
Okay, I thought you said
like,
the other
you're
way.
You're killing it. I'm like, I'm fucked.
Well, for me, I get, and I love the respect that I get. I love the admiration, not the right word, but I love the just automatic. I get an automatic trust and respect that no one deserves. No one deserves it. And I talked about this, I think, in an article recently. I said, wealth comes with an implied morality, trust, respect, and knowledge that doesn't often exist. Meaning, just because someone has more money than you does not mean they're smarter than you. Certainly doesn't mean they're a better person than you, and does not deserve your automatic admiration. Make them earn it.
Yeah.
Make me earn it. You know, it's great. But if like when I try to get really like micro on it, not macro, like it's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
More so now for me than on my way up. And I see it, and I see people that maybe aren't wired the same way I am that take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And social media is a perfect example. Perfect example.
Do you find like if someone agrees with everything I say, I don't like it.
Oh my God.
I don't like them.
Okay. Can I give you a story? Because you're going to love this.
Yeah.
So I'm in a great relationship now, but I was single for about a year or so in Naples. So single guy in my early 40s. I've got some money. I mean, it was
fun.
It's a situation. Okay. But well, it should be.
Yeah.
It should be. But I was going on these dates and everything I said, funniest thing that ever heard.
Yeah.
Everything I said was oh my God, that's amazing. On one date, I literally said, hon, I don't even like myself as much as you're pretending to like me. Like, relax.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not like how you're acting. But yeah, no, I hate it. So you want it, but when you get it, you hate it.
Yeah.
Right?
I broke up with a girl for it.
As you should.
Because I remember once when I was trying to figure out a certain like a funnel, and I go to her, I'm like, so I'm like, what do you think about it? She goes, it's great. I love it. I'm like, why didn't you buy it?
Ooh.
She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, if it's fucking great,
Yeah.
you would have bought it. And she's like, oh, well, I guess blah, 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 blah. I'm like, fucking say that from the start.
Give me some feedback.
You know what I mean? Like, and like, look, don't get me wrong. Like when my wife gives me feedback, maybe it's because, you know, when you're closer to someone, your tolerance is shorter. At first, I'm like, fuck you.
I'm sweating.
I told you.
These lights are killing me.
Hot in here.
Holy cow. Can I have a spritz? Holy shit. Okay.
That's why I always say like shorts. I got my
Lord,
fucking
you
legs
didn't tell
out
me.
for the fans,
Lord,
you know.
I'm gonna go topless.
I have the same, like, depending on where it comes from.
Yep.
Usually, like, I mean, my friend, I think as well, a lot of people, you have to give them a lot of feedback first about their stuff, which would then give them permission to give you feedback. So, yeah, so like my friend, for example, I'm like, he sent me something, he goes, what do you think? I deliberately broke it down as harsh as I could. And I have like a list like this big to him.
Yep.
Every time I send stuff now to look, he looks at, I get the same size list.
Same size list.
And it grows,
That's great.
You know, and that's, and I think a lot of people need that permission. Like I got one client and he asked me opinions on, what's your opinion on my content on, like, how do I come across?
Yeah.
And I was like, your family stuff and everything is great. I feel like, you know, I can see a bit about you. Your professional stuff, bit standoffish. I was like, and
It's honest feedback.
yeah, I was like, I don't think it's your fault. It's the camera angle, the lighting, the coloring, and you just got to, we got to get you talking on camera more comfortably. He was like, huh.
I love that.
Went back into his office with all his staff. He's like, Blake said this, and this about my content. They're like, yeah, fair enough.
See that?
And he was like, why didn't you tell me? They're like,
Yeah, it's so crazy.
you know?
Yeah.
And so like, people need that permission to like be like, hey, look, I'm going to sound like a dick. But I promise you it's because this, like, you can take
Because
what I'm
I
going to
care.
say. Yeah, you can take what I'm going to say,
Yeah.
or you might not like it. Like,
Right.
again, the course that I just spent 16 grand on, they're telling me do this, this, and this. And I go, no, here are the barriers with that, and that.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, really? And I go, yeah, the whole point of me doing this is so I don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that.
And as a result, the products become a little bit more airtight.
Yeah.
But if I was just like, yeah, you guys are great.
Yeah,
like,
you're
you know, you make $1 million a month. You know what you're talking about. I'm like, you do, but you're not 100% correct.
You're not 100% correct.
I'm coming to you for different insights, you know?
Yeah, my best friend, who's a guy who worked for me, is the only reason he's my best friend. Is because every time he sees me, he goes, I just want to remind you, you're ugly, you're fat, you suck. And honestly, I think half the stuff he says is bullshit. And I go, God damn, I missed you.
Yeah, you need that.
I missed
need
you,
that.
man.
Shut up.
You know, my Chandra, who I'm living with now in a great relationship, she's I was single, as I said, for about a year and a half. She's the first girl who I asked out, was like, yeah. And I was like, oh,
Isn't it funny,
wait
hey?
a minute. You said no? That is exciting.
But I'm a catch.
I'm like, yeah, wait, hold on. Let me explain. And she's like, I don't care about that car.
Please read my flyer.
Yeah. She's like, I don't care about that car. I don't care about this. She's like, what else you got? And I was like, I am in love.
Yeah. Isn't it funny? We're so fucking retarded.
We're so fucked up. We as men are unbelievable. I don't know how women tolerate us.
I don't know. I don't know how we tolerate women sometimes.
Well,
shots fired.
Listen, they are far easier, I think, to deal with. We don't have to deal with ourselves, but
That is true.
imagine having to deal with you.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine dealing with me. And
No,
I only
that's
know
true.
this because
He just nodded.
Of course. One of my daughters is a goddamn spitting image of me, like, mentally.
Yeah.
So when I get the most angry with her is when she's acting the same way I'm acting. And I have that moment when I'm like, man, I don't know if I like myself. Like if I had to deal with me.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I'm like, I'm sorry.
That's why I like the podcast. Like, I'm a massive advocate of people filming themselves third person,
Yep.
but seeing the unedited version.
Sure.
Because, I mean, obviously when I'm editing stuff, I see the stuff I cut out. Like the podcast, I don't cut anything out except for when I gave you some advice, but we have to cut out about the camera. You guys now know I cut one thing out. Sorry.
Next time I come, I want a fan. Can you cut out all the sweat?
Just airbrush everything.
Holy cow.
But the thing is, though, it's so funny how you can perceive shit differently. And I said this in the last podcast with him, so sorry to regurgitate it, guys, but the episode with Brad Koza.
Yeah.
First time I edited through, I'm like, shut the fuck up, Blake. Shut up. Like, I'm talking to him. You can go back and watch it. Like, when I'm talking to him about crypto, I'm telling him, like, so what's happening in my head is I'm explaining how I understand it.
Sure.
That's just me. I'm like, look, this is what I understand, blah, 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 blah. As I'm watching it, the mentality I was watching it third person at that moment was like, he pays smarter people than you, Blake, to do this shit. Shut up. And like, I'm just watching it going, I'm cutting this all out. This is bad.
Oh,
and then I watch it back later and I'm like, it's not that bad, I guess. You know, whatever. I'll keep it. And then my mate Sid messaged me going, dude, I love this episode. It's so good.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, cool. Do you think I talk too much in it? He goes, nah, what are you talking about? I was like, huh. So like the same piece of content is perceived in me twice differently.
Sure.
And then someone else is like, it's fantastic. So I was like, you know what? You never know how it's going to be perceived.
Yeah.
And then sometimes again, I'll say something in a podcast or in between takes of a video we're shooting and I'm just like, God, I'm a dick. I thought I was being funny. Or then other times I'm like, man, I'm a charming motherfucker.
I'll let you know either way.
Yeah, those ones don't happen as often as the dick.
Yeah, well, you know.
But no, a big advocate of that filming because it's such a interesting.
Sure.
It's an interesting experience. Like or something you'll be like, oh, I don't know how. Like Josh. Josh is very deadpan, and I'm like, I don't know if he liked me. And then I'm editing, and I'm like, oh, he smiled a couple of times.
He smiled a couple of times.
Yeah,
that reinforcement, please.
Yeah, well, that internal thing of how you're perceiving something.
Sure.
As soon as you're at a different position, you're like, that's not how it went at all.
Yeah, that's crazy how in your mind.
It's so different.
Yeah.
And it makes you really start, I guess it gives you a bit of freedom when you know like, hey, what you thought happened probably didn't.
Oh, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
As you go back to men and women, the same situation viewed completely different. In our minds, we're both 100% right because that's the way it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And the same thing, and I could leave here thinking this is the best podcast in the world, and you'd be like, that guy was fucking awful. He was sweating like a baboon. He didn't say shit. And him and I are like high-fiving in the parking lot, or vice versa.
Or vice versa later on, you're like, I don't know if I like that guy. But no. So no, that is the fun thing about content. And the tricky thing is, especially like as I get to a point where people start editing the stuff and I haven't even seen it myself in the raw form, it's going to be interesting to be like, I have to be like, can you still send me in between take stuff?
Yeah.
So that I don't get, again, too high on my supply. I'm like, man, I'm good on camera. I'm so good, you know? Because it's a weird construct, especially when you're editing stuff for people and they start seeing like, you know, you've taken 20 minutes to get them
and just squish it into 20 seconds.
In like 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And then people are like, you know, wow, all right, cool. But at least my clients, they're always just like, man, you make me look so good because I know the back end of that and that was painful.
Well, I will expect the same.
No, the reason I love this stuff is because it's so organic that you're not trying to get something across.
This is conversational. This is enjoyable.
Yeah. I can't remember if you said, maybe it was someone, a few people even like, oh, do you want me to send like a spec sheet or something? And like, you know, like just stuff so I can be prepared. I'm like, I don't fucking know what I'm going to say.
No, my daughter asked me, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. But that's how I'm best.
Yeah.
Like if I'm speaking a speaking engagement, if I write down things that I want to talk about, it is a disaster.
Because you're worried about hitting the points.
That's right.
Yeah.
Versus I just go, open my mouth, and sometimes as I'm speaking, my mind is like, that's pretty good. What are you saying right now? Where the hell did that come from?
Yeah.
Like, I must have heard it somewhere. I'm talking to myself while I'm talking.
I find too, like the more reps you put in, it becomes more second nature. You know, like, and that's what makes it easier to say the points. That's why, like, when I'm telling people to create content, I'm like, just say the shit you say every day.
Just talk.
And then the other thing too is like someone else will see it. Then now you don't have to answer the same frequently asked question. You can build on that question.
That's true.
You know?
Yeah.
Or they don't even ask it at all because they're like, I know the answer.
You're right. It is repetition. And I teach my daughters this in a really unique way. Mm-hmm. So everywhere we go, I've just always been this way. I talk to everybody. Like I go to the bar. In 5 minutes, I have 12 new friends.
Yeah.
One's 90, one's 30, one's that. And my girlfriend at first was like, what the hell is going on? Now she's like into it. Like, we're talking to everybody. She's getting a phone number over at Bay House, like a 90-year-old couple. Like, let's hang out. Like they're texting her.
That's great.
But my daughters and I, everywhere we go, I teach the same thing. Talk to everyone. Everyone. Say hi. And so they've gotten to that rhythm. And because I believe my if you said to me, what has gotten you here? You only pick one quality. It's my ability to communicate. That's it. Now, that's clearly not it, but that is such in my opinion, a lost art form now. Because to me, communication isn't talking to a screen and posting it on the internet. It's a form of communication, sure, but the lost art of meeting someone, creating that connection, creating a sale, negotiating something.
Yeah.
Now I'm forced so often to do it on Zoom, and that's fine, but it's still not the same as face to face. But
yeah, it is a weird transition, but it is kind of cool.
It is
as
cool.
Well, like
it's cool.
The fact that you can have a touch point with someone, 20,000 different someones at the same time.
It's interesting.
You know?
Yep.
And then that way I find that when you reach out, the conversation, it doesn't feel like you're starting from it doesn't feel as cold of a message.
I agree with that.
You're like, hey, you kind of know me.
Yeah.
Or in the best case scenario, like we were doing vlogs when I was in Australia with my wife. And the first time I came over here her family's in West Virginia, I didn't introduce myself once.
Oh.
Not once. It was Blake, blah, blah, blah. Oh my gosh, when you went to Bali,
I get it.
because of the vlogs.
Yeah. That is cool.
It was like, that's when I was like, oh, this is why you do it is I don't have to introduce myself. It's just like
you're connecting without realizing that you're even.
Yeah, like even when I messaged you, it was like you'd at least seen a couple of clips. So you're like, all right, there's a face and some of the characteristics and mannerisms that I understand about this person.
Yeah.
Versus just like, want to be on my podcast?
Well, I still text Brad. I'm like, am I okay with this guy? He's like, oh, he's a great guy.
All right, we'll
he's
give
like,
it Brad.
He's like, come on, D. You get along with everybody. I'm like, I'm just asking.
Yeah. And it is funny. Like, I mean, I feel like as well, after especially 2 hours of conversation, you know if you do or don't like each other.
100%.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I've had to be very selective with this.
I mean, to be fair, I could pretend for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's
but
good.
I'm not.
Well, that's what he's saying.
I've had to do it before.
Big grin there. He's like,
son of a bitch.
Yeah. Well, you can do. It's true. Like, it's hard. I don't know. It's funny. I used to be an actor, but in real life, I'm a bad actor. If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
You know, like...
Yeah. You wear your heart on your sleeve. You're just going to say what you have to say.
Yeah, like my wife hates it. So does my father-in-law. One time, like... Not so much like I'm going to be... I'll be a dick sometimes. Yeah. But like one guy, I was holding my daughter and I'm like, excuse me, sir. And like the waiter he obviously didn't hear me.
Right.
So he just walks past. Like he's not being rude, but he just walks past.
Yeah.
And because he hasn't heard me, I'm having fun now. I'm like, all right, never mind. Have a good day, mate. And Stacey and her dad are like, you're so embarrassing.
They're so embarrassed.
I'm like, he didn't hear me. How's that embarrassing?
Yeah, right. That's my favorite thing to do, by the way, is to try to embarrass other people. Because it doesn't really happen to me.
No. And it's like, again, it's like when you start from seeing stuff third person, you realize everything's not real.
Right.
How I perceive shit.
It's certainly not as intense as everyone perceives things to be. No. Like, relax.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't know, I love it. There's a liberation to it as well.
100%.
You know?
Yep.
Like I love getting my daughter. Like she's 11 months. I'll be like, ah. And then she'll start going, ah. In like a restaurant. They're like, ah. And I'm like, sorry.
Oh, that's great. I still do it at 13 and 15. So
yeah.
A little different, but same concept.
I find though, like people just want to see other people have fun. And if they don't, I'm like, I wouldn't be one of your friends with them anyway.
Yeah.
So like, again, like she's screaming going, ah. And people actually don't look at you, the baby. They look at the people around to see how I need to know how I need to react.
How can I react to
and
that?
if I'm like, oh, people are like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I hope you're okay. Yeah. Or I'm like, and people turn around, they start laughing. And I'm like, again, I have a responsibility to not ruin their lunch. So I'm going to laugh. They're going to now enjoy the moment because they've looked for social proof on how I should react. Yeah. That I've actually just done them a service by being more blasé about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
If you react that way, I'm the guy that just try to get the kid to go even crazier. Then I'm getting hit.
Yeah, kids, right?
Oh, jeez.
But so have you got plans that you're doing at the moment, like looking into the future that you can?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always investing in new companies. So there's a couple new companies. We talked just a little bit about Cali.
Yeah.
So there's aggressive expansion.
I love their
plans.
coloring, by the way. Their branding's
Isn't it great?
It's pretty cool.
I actually went to Lauderdale this past week to meet with them and just see and feel and touch the product. And they have created a culture that is like if there's like a epitome of what would be perfect, it exists in every one of the stores that I went to.
Really? How many did you say they have again?
They've got 4 open. They've got like 14 in development. They've got 30 or 40 other, 30 or 40 other franchises going, and then we are partnering and going to do 30 from Naples to Orlando.
Wow.
And then
so they're Florida based?
Yes, Florida based.
Yeah.
Despite the name. But he's from Cali.
To be fair, there's a place called Bondi Pizza in Australia, and it started in Bondi, but it's everywhere else
that's
now.
Exactly right. Yeah. But yeah, they have an excitement that I don't know that I've ever seen it. I wanted to be a part of it, and the answer is it came from them.
Yeah.
They created a freedom with their employees. They created a sense of ownership with their employees, and it's palatable.
Yeah.
Like every customer that walks up leaves with a smile. As corny as that sounds, I promise you it's true.
It's a Chick-fil-A model.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to be a part of that. So that's one of the things from a developmental standpoint that I'm working on. What else? New concepts in the past couple of weeks. A Forex trading platform.
Okay.
Really kind of interesting. Met 2 young gentlemen doing really well, trading outside of their condo. Came to myself to serve as an equity partner and CEO, and we're scaling that company really, really aggressively and quickly.
Yeah.
The idea, the trajectory in the next 12 months is to have between 200 and 300 million under management.
Jeez.
They're producing about a 20% return monthly.
Monthly.
Right. Now, listen. If you said this to me, I would do that. I do the eyebrow thing too. And in my mind, I'd be like, fuck you. It's a scam.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what I said to them when they first
Because
came
that's
to
what I
me.
thought Forex was like I don't know enough about it, but
Nor did I.
I never
until
get a
about
good
3
rub.
weeks ago.
Yeah, I never get a good rub about it.
But I think that's by design. So foreign exchange is all it is, right?
Yeah.
It's trading foreign exchange, foreign money in U.S. dollars. There's just short of $7 trillion a day is traded.
Really?
It blows the stock market out of the water.
It's a lot of money.
Until recently, it is a lot of money. Until recently, it was really just a corporate trading platform. So just massive corporations did it.
Yeah.
And it's become more and more mainstream. So 20% monthly return is actually considered kind of baseline. And exactly. So I went back.
I have some money. Take it.
Listen, we'll talk offline. But they have 3 years of data of trading.
Yeah.
And they actually average a higher return monthly. So it's unbelievable. And by the way, they're not the only ones. There are other firms that are more mature and been doing this for a very long time. So it's not, it's unregulated. And so that's why I think it gets a bad rap, not because it's unregulated, but because the government can't control it. Right? And what that unregulated doesn't mean, oh my God, my money's not safe. What unregulated means is you don't have to be an accredited investor.
Yeah.
You can be 10 years old with $1 or 100 with 100 million, and you can trade any given day you want, 24 hours a day. And so there is.
So it's like crypto in a way.
Very similar. Yep.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you can convert your currency to crypto. And so I'm just now getting my master's degree in crypto and cryptocurrency and infinite banking and all of these. Just not that I hadn't heard of it before, but it's just like, I don't, I'm 40. I can't see it and feel it and touch it. I'll just pass on it. And
we can't see, feel, and touch any money these days anyway.
I can't see, feel, and touch. It was just me being, I didn't want to invest my time to learn. There was no educational basis for my ignorance. I just wanted to be ignorant. But now that I've gotten into it and really digging in and learning as I need to as the CEO of this company, it's incredible stuff. Of course, it's risk. Everything has risk.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. So that's one of them. There's quite a few brands. I look to try to find a new brand, if possible, once a month.
Okay.
And so whether that's a full equity partner, partial, investment, operational, there's an exciting e-com business that I just started working with, one of the largest in the market, based out of Miami. So at any given time, I've got between 20 and 30 different companies in all different industries.
Yeah.
And everybody's first question is, what is your industry? And it's always been odd to me because I am a business, I guess, generalist. What I mean by that is I may not be an expert in any one field, but my expertise or my common sense is what I really refer to it as.
Yeah.
I consider myself a common sense genius. I'm far from a genius. Educationally, I'm okay. Like I know some stuff, but maybe I can do a dinner party. But don't test me, right? Don't test me. But when it comes to common sense, I think that's where I excel.
Yeah.
So the foundation of any company is fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
And then what the expertise part is what I either invest in or I outsource. And then we drive. And so that model has worked really well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there like a baseline that you won't look at before? Like, for example, Hormozis, they are like 3 million above from now on. Do you have a similar, do you have a baseline as well? Hello. I hope you're getting a lot of value and enjoying this conversation so far. As you know, this is a very young podcast, and right now the best way for people to find out about it is through word of mouth. So if you have like a spare 20 seconds, it would mean the world if you could just leave a 5-star review and some feedback, what you love, what you would like to see more of, so that we can constantly improve this for you. So if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, leave a review there. Now, if you're on YouTube and watching this, if you could just comment what you love, what you didn't like even, that's going to help as well. But also more stuff you'd love to see or people, that'd mean the world to us as well. Also, if you haven't subscribed, make sure please hit the subscribe button, hit that bell as well, so that you can find out when the next episode comes out. And we can just constantly be getting it better and better for you guys. And please tell anyone who you think would be interested in this, so that we can grow and get the word out and just share some more interesting stories about some interesting people. Anyways, enjoy the show.
I'm open to anything. In fact, I'm open to startup. I'm open to someone that's making $50,000 a year. And people say, well, why would you, isn't that a waste of your time? Well, the answer is, again, back to what I'm actually investing in.
Yeah.
So I'm investing in that person. And so I invested in 2 entrepreneurs who brought me, one was a concept and one was making maybe, I don't know, $5,000 a month, but they had a vision.
Yeah.
And I could see it and I could feel it. And I was like, I'm in. Became full equity partner with them. And then, 5 years later, it's just massively successful. So who's to say that if you're not this, you won't be that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of the approach that I take.
Yeah. Like Gary Vee, he always says he bets on the jockey, not the horse.
100%.
Because he's like, if the jockey fails twice, the third one could be the thing that pops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've never heard him say that, but I'm a big fan of his approach to everything.
Yeah.
Right? There are a lot of good guys out there that are saying a lot of stuff. I don't need to get into who versus who, but I really appreciate his approach and how he does things. In fact, as I think about the story I told you about Rita's and bringing that gallon of ice, I think I may have picked up on a story he told where he delivered a bottle of wine to a consumer. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, I think so.
I think subconsciously. I didn't realize it until just now.
Yeah.
I think that's where I may have picked it up. But what a great message. So anyway, his approach, his humbleness, how he goes about things, how I at least infer how he is to his people is how I try to be. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. He's an interesting one too. I love the fact, because one thing for him is like he just is who he is 100%.
Yep.
And obviously when I first moved here, one of the things was like, hey, just be careful like how you talk, how you dress. That sort of, in terms of like the networking groups I was going to.
Okay.
I'm Aussie. I can't help. I swear a little too much, but I also wear shorts everywhere. Like
That's okay.
It's and so they were saying like, dress a certain, just we don't want it to hinder business. And I was like, bro, me being half myself is going to hinder business.
Okay. I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Like if I sorry,
is this live?
No.
Can I?
You want to pee?
Yeah, and just is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Right.
We've got like only about 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
so time's flying.
It is flying. Has it already been 2
hour and 50?
Jesus Christ. I need to splash some more.
He needs to spritz.
Soak. Ooh, good thing I wore black, Jen. Right, cool.
All right, and we're back. You feel better?
I feel fantastic. I just went in there and I thought, have we talked about anything?
Yeah, a lot. A shitload.
I just feel like we're at a bar having a drink. I was like, man, this actually goes this is pretty good.
Yeah,
An hour and 50.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
It's so funny. Like everyone that gets on, like most people that get on at the moment are just like, it's their first time podcast.
Yep.
Or it's it's in their first 5 most likely. But always they're just like, you read the email, you're like, 2 hours? I just don't see how that'll go. And then I'm like, hey, I got to wrap this up. And they're like, what?
Yeah, I was like, I want more than 10 minutes. I haven't even talked about it.
No, we've covered a lot. Yeah, no, I would know. Like, it's so cool. Like, doing this, I don't know. You start. It's like, again, practicing how to talk to people.
Yeah.
And again, I could then see the conversation back again and be like, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that.
Sure.
You know, or like, that's where it fell apart.
Off the rails.
Yeah, but I can't remember what we were talking about last time. What were we talking about? I don't know.
What were we talking about? See, I screwed it up by going to the bathroom.
Don't worry. I'm so glad people have started going because, like, in the email it says if
you
you
said
need
it to
to
me. I was
pee-
like, thank God.
Yeah. Because everyone, like, Josh was like, I could tell in his face, like, I need to pee. I'm like, do you want to wrap this up? I need to pee. And he's like, oh, you're good.
Okay, very good. Very good.
But, that's right. So you have a couple of the Forex stuff.
Yeah.
So you basically are trading between currencies based on how they increase and fall relative to one another?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just the same as Bitcoin, or sorry, crypto, not Bitcoin, but crypto is you're trading between currencies that are rising and falling.
Yeah.
And but Forex is leveraging the actual current market of the dollar.
Exactly right.
Okay, that makes sense now.
It's not overly complicated. But again, before I got involved in this, I had very much the same. Like it's a scam. It's actually not. It's actually pretty normal.
Yeah.
It's been going on forever. So yeah, it's very interesting. A recent e-com opportunity, drop shipping, creating e-commerce stores. So it's just a lot of stuff kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Which really keeps me engaged.
Yeah.
Right? What I love more than anything is the beginning.
Yeah. You're a builder.
I'm a builder.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love you can see my eye. Like I love.
I don't think people can if that's not them, they don't get it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep. And that's why I always sell my companies, because I recognize when I'm not being as much of a value anymore.
Yeah.
And it's time for me to get out because I'm doing the company a disservice.
Yeah.
And also, I like to sell when there's still some meat on the bone.
Yeah.
In my experience, it's the best way to get the most money for your company. Create a trajectory, identify the future, and then sell.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I believe, at least for me, that's my optimal point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That makes sense. And so in the example of you've come in, you've helped scale someone's business, it's their baby and they still don't want to part ways. I'm guessing you'll help sell it to like another venture capital and then sort of trades around that way?
Yeah, most often people understand upfront because I'm early on in my career, I didn't disclose everything. No, I don't mean I was like being secretive, but I wasn't like, hey, here's the plan of what I really want to do in 5 years.
Yeah.
And I ran into some issues with like, well, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So my first conversations, if we're going down that road, is listen, here, if we do this, here's my plan.
Yeah.
And there's some flexibility on time, but there's no flexibility on exit. I am not in this company to have a legacy. I'm not in this company to retire off of this. I'm in this company to accelerate your growth, supersonic, and get out of this in 1 to 3 years. And you can exit with me and enjoy that, or I'm going to exit and I can't tell you who your new partner is going to be.
Yeah.
And so if that's okay with you, then we go forward. But you have to have that alignment. Well, you don't have to, but you have to if you want to end things well.
Yeah.
Right. So for me,
that makes sense too. Yeah. I mean, that's always the tricky thing with starting any sort of partnership is laying down the vision, because otherwise if you can't have the uncomfortable conversation at the start,
oh my God,
it's going to be 20 times worse at the end.
100%. I literally say I have like when you go through things, as you do it often, you find yourself saying very similar things, right?
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite lines is, if I can't say this to you, we can't be partners, because as I said, it's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a lot of things that you don't like. I'm going to say even more things that you don't agree, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So long as we do it respectfully, but I am never going to pull punches with you. This is not an emotional situation for me. This is a company that has a purpose, and we're going to execute it to its fullest potential, and then it's in my rear view.
Yeah.
And so that's it. So it doesn't mean I'm not emotionally involved in the success. Of course I am. You have to be emotionally involved in some way, or else it has no meaning to you.
Yeah.
But the second that the price is met for me, okay.
Yeah.
Now, the first time I sold a big company that I had built from the ground up was the gyms. And it's still a little bit of a weird feeling driving by it, because I put my life into that for 10 years. And now I don't even go there.
Yeah.
Somebody else owns it. And I don't know the people that work there. So it is a kind of a unique feeling that I don't know is ever lost.
Yeah.
But there's
something that's so close to you. It's like when you see an ex, you could have ended terribly, but there's still that little bit of like, I remember when they were good. Like, like there's, you remember
Do you have
the
that
whole
feeling about some?
So I know, quick side note. I have like the weirdest in terms of like my wife knows all about every single part of my past.
Really? All of your ex, when you say all, I mean like all of your
Details.
relationships? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Was that asked for, or would you just throw that onto her?
Well, no, a bit of both. Because we started off, and again, I'm sorry people heard this before. The time I met her, I went to Bali, and I'm just talking to my mates about the sex party I'd been to at the night before.
Okay.
And in walks this girl who's 4 years celibate. So I'm just telling them these stories. I'm like, they're fun, they're great, but I don't know if it's my thing. And like, so I'm saying I've just been to this wild thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, she fucking knows that. And
it couldn't get much.
No. And so, but also my thing is like, I'd rather equip you with the weapons that people can potentially use against. Like,
That's smart.
Again, I don't want someone potentially going, did you know this about Blake?
Use at a sex party.
Yeah. I'd rather her going, yeah, and did you know this about Blake? And like, what?
Yeah.
And
But did you ask her about all of her stuff?
she doesn't want to tell me as much. It's just that's where she's at. But my thing as well is, even like all my exes, there was a reason I was with them at that time.
I'd agree with that.
And most people are like, for me to say that I enjoyed being with them at a certain time means I'm still in love with them. But it doesn't.
It does not.
You know what I mean? Like,
No.
I enjoyed doing a lot of stuff when I was 14.
That's right.
Doesn't mean I do it now. But
That's
I don't go back like, oh, no, I didn't do that when I was 14. Like, yeah, you did.
You
Dude.
did. Yeah.
You
got to
fucking
embrace
did.
it. Yeah, you got to embrace it.
And so that's what I say to her. And I was like, she's met some of my exes.
Yep.
Like, we've chatted for length on WhatsApp with a couple of them, even like in the last year or so.
That's healthy. Because
I'm just like, I am so happy for this girl who's now married with someone that is right for her.
That is right. That's
And
it.
I'm happy for her, whether it's now a baby or whatever it is that's giving her joy. Right. That for me to, again, if I hold on to anything like, oh, that's not like, that's a heavy emotion.
It's
Versus just being like, dude, how have you been? Like, how's your daughter? How's your son? Like, how's your hubby? And they're like, yeah, he's really good. Blah, blah, we're doing this at the moment. How's Stacy? How's Sienna? I'm like, it's great. That it is funny because like I'll tell her about what they're doing at the moment, and I have this actual smile, and she's not jealous because I'm like,
she knows.
I'm like, dude, if I wanted to be with them, I'd be messaging him going, I miss you. Like,
or you'd still be with them.
I'm like, you can look at our messages, like, and I don't know that. So same with like business. It's like, again, where it went bad or it went great, there's still going to be that nostalgic feel to it because of there was great memories, there were lessons, and so I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I guess I don't necessarily share the details of certain things, but I do believe in the philosophy of giving big picture stuff, right? Like, trips or Costa Rica crazy times or going to LA to do the mansion, like crazy stuff like that. I want to involve my person because that's who I am. I take a really unique approach even with my daughters. Of course, it's a PG-13 version, but I am unusually honest with my daughters.
Yeah.
And I do that because I expect and want that unusual honesty from them. But how as a parent can I expect that if I'm not willing to give it on some level? Like, Dad, did you ever do drugs?
Yeah.
Well, God, no, I never did. Well, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did. Because if you ever decide to do that, I want you to come to me. Or, just so things like that. So I believe it's a healthy way to go about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Isn't it? I always find it funny when parents try to tell their kids don't do something that they do themselves.
I will never do it.
You know?
Nope.
There's one lesson that I heard. It was great from a guy. He found cigarettes when his daughter was 16, found cigarettes. Obviously, most parents are like, do you know how bad they are for you? Like, again, they're going to tell you.
Right. Shut down immediately.
Yeah. So what he did was, like, she's very book smart, very, clued in. He goes, I'm not going to say you can or can't. It's up to you. All I'm going to ask is, can you just put together like a 2-page thesis, what they are, you know, what are the health benefits
Learn
of
about
cigarettes?
what you're putting in your body.
What is it? Boom, boom, boom. And he goes, all I want to know is just that I know you have an understanding.
Yep.
I don't care about anything else. A couple of days later, she comes back, puts down 2-page thesis, puts down the cigarettes. I'm never fucking touching those again, Dad.
It's beautiful.
And he was like, okay.
Yeah, beautiful.
He solved a problem in 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, for a lifetime.
Because kids are people. And that's what I don't understand is parents don't treat their kids like they're people. You don't own them. They are their own little person.
Yeah.
So you need to treat them like that. Now, look, I'm not saying that you're not guiding your child. Of course you are. But I believe in the same kind of concept. Here's all of the information. Because listen, don't do it. They're going to do it anyway.
Bro, you tell me don't do something, I'm like, oh, why?
If they decide they're going to do it, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
It's like you, me, anybody. And if you tell me, and I've already told you my kids are like me, don't do it, even if I had no intentions of doing it, guess what I'm doing?
Yeah,
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it.
I'm doing it. So same thing. Here's the information. Maybe here was my experience when I did it, what I didn't like about it, what scared me, this. And so I don't know that you should at this age, but if you do decide, please come to me, or so kind of the same thing. So I believe in, I say I'm raising 2 lionesses, right? And I am.
Yeah.
I am raising my girls to go out and tackle the world, to never need a man, but to want a man, and to just take on the world. I don't think, as I've gotten older and hired a lot of executives, I often lean into hiring females over males, which may be a unique statement to make. But at least in business, I find they bring a very unique perspective. They tend to be more level-headed. There's not as much machismo. Of course, not a universal statement, but in my earlier career, I leaned one way, now with the other.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm not saying it's based on sex at all, but
Yeah.
it's a unique
But
kind
you're
of thing
noticing
that
a
I've
trend
seen.
that happens
I am.
psychologically.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because that's how people should also approach staff.
Yes.
The constant thing I hear all the time, we don't need to baby them. I'm like, you do until a degree.
Yes, you do.
You definitely fucking have to. Like, I shouldn't have to explain it. I'm like, you do.
You do.
You do. And that's where I think you hear Rogan say it all the time. He goes, I realize that adults are just babies in bigger bodies,
Yes,
and we all are.
We all are.
And it's that thing. It's like a baby that is learning shit.
Right.
It needs to keep learning stuff, otherwise it's going to crawl for its whole life.
That's right.
And adults are the same, but at the same time, as a manager, don't micromanage, but guide.
Yeah. Empower.
Yeah, empower,
Yeah.
guide, and like that example with the sales guy who wanted to give away stuff. I love it. Give him the power. He'll learn. I'll give him the next step. But then he'll learn a lifetime, and that's so much better because now I've mitigated versus constantly like, no, which is what a lot of managers act like.
100%.
No. And so the staff go, F you, mom. Like,
100%. Yeah. I think some people want to become a manager so that they have that power they don't have in other parts of their life. But if they only understood that the ultimate, I guess, power is cultivating people.
Yeah.
That's how you get people to actually follow and believe in you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so generic to say it, but it's just so fundamentally
hard.
true.
It's very difficult too.
Yeah.
And it takes patience. It takes seeing 10 steps ahead. But again, you can't be there unless you've done it yourself.
Agreed. Yeah, it's easy to sit here after 20 years of hiring and firing and training and building to say, hey, this is just what you do. But at least I recognize that it isn't easy. I remember it all, which I think is an asset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. We're going to have to wrap it up. It's been two hours and 10 minutes.
It's only been 2 hours.
I got to pee now, so I was like, we can't do 2 pee breaks in one podcast. But I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, great to get to properly meet you.
Yeah, as well.
Definitely won't be the last time. And for anyone who wants to reach out for whatever reason, they want some advice or looking into getting some capital or some assistance, how do they reach you?
Yeah, my main website for 3F Management is just www.3fmanagement.com, or Instagram is @Derik Fay, DERIKFAY.
It'll be in the description too, guys, on Spotify. And if you are new, please subscribe. Also got more interesting people like Derik. And just always you can find out different people in the area that might be useful to you, or information-wise or connection-wise. But yeah, cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, drinks.
Drinks, more water.
I was thinking something a little different, but it's a little early, but maybe tonight.
It is, yeah. We'll do something tonight.
Done.
All right. See you guys. Bye. That was fun, dude.
That was fun. I can't believe Charles went by so fast.